The opinions expressed by tonight's guest do not represent the opinions or position of Spaced Out Radio, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with SOR Media. Listener discretion is advised. Here at Spaced Out Radio, we are about to take you higher. Broadcasting from the Rocky Mountains of Colorado to you listening around the world. This is Spaced Out Sunday with host Tessa Nicole Thomas. You can follow Tessa on our Facebook page at Spaced Out Radio, on Twitter at TessaTNT, and you can subscribe to her YouTube channel. Go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio for the archive.
But we break on command 'cause women rule the world.
Buckle up, space travelers. Let the countdown begin.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
It's time to go for a ride with host Tessa Nicole Thomas.
I'm such a lucky guy 'cause after all this time, it's like the deeper I go, the deeper I fall. Yeah, the deeper I go, the deeper I fall.
Good evening, Spaced Out Radio. Secure your tinfoil hats, buckle down tight, and hold on loosely as we soar over the rocky tops of the La Platas on a Rocky Mountain high, get sucked into the vortex of the Four Corners, and settle down snugly at mile marker 419.9 in colorful Colorado. It is Saturday, November 3rd, Sunday, November 4th for those of you on the East Coast and beyond, and this is Spaced Out Radio. Hope you guys had a rockin' week, an awesome day, and an even better evening. I am your host, Tessa TNT, and I am live tonight broadcasting from beautiful Fylth, Colorado. We are 150,000 strong nightly on Spaced Out Radio Network, spacedoutradio.com, Spreaker, Paranormal Radio, TalkStream Live, as well as Deep Talk Radio, which you can find at deeptalkradio.com. Don't forget to head to our website, spacedoutradio.com, where you can peruse the Spaced Out Radio store and read the encounter online dealing with everything strange, paranormal, and odd. Well, tonight I have a treat for all my guys and gals out there. Tonight we will be getting to know and talking with Cliff Barackman from Finding Bigfoot, and he's also got several other things going on there. And Cliff has been a dedicated Sasquatch field researcher for more than 2 decades. It was his dedication to the subject and his online presence that drew the attention of Discovery Communications, who later invited him to be a cast member on Animal Planet's Finding Bigfoot television series. Both on and off camera, he has managed to gather data supporting the hypothesis that Sasquatches are an undiscovered species of great ape that walks bipedally and lives in North America. Though finding and documenting data is a goal of Cliff's research, it is not the primary goal. As it turns out, the journey is just as rewarding as any destination. Cliff has appeared on various media outlets over the years in regards to his Bigfoot experience. He has written extensively on the subject, with his work being featured not only on his own blog, but on other websites as well. He has also been featured in student reports, newspaper articles, video documentaries, and more. In 2007, Cliff was contacted to be on the History Channel's Monster Quest, the episode entitled Legend of the Hairy Beast, which featured Cliff and fellow Bigfoot researchers James Bobo Fay, investigating Bigfoot sighting reports on the Klamath River in Northern California, being the first whites to ever be invited to do Bigfoot research on the Yurok Indian Reservation. Cliff and Bobo interviewed Native American elders about their experiences with Sasquatches. They hired Indian River guides and made base camp in a cabin with no access other than by river. They also utilized advanced night vision technology to try to film Sasquatches at night from a river jet boat. Being well respected in the Bigfoot community and beyond, Cliff is also called upon for comments about Bigfoot evidence and research. He was the featured expert in news items broadcast to Portland, Oregon, and Seattle, Washington media markets in regards to the infamous Georgia Bigfoot hoax of 2008, where he clearly stated that it was a falsification. He has appeared on many internet radio shows and was also a featured guest on Coast to Coast with George Norrie. In spring 2010, Cliff was asked to accompany Bob Saget on a Bigfoot expedition in northern Washington state, and Bob was filming an episode of his A&E series Strange Days with Bob Saget, where he would partake in an eccentric subculture's way of life for a weekend. Bob and Cliff were filmed discussing the various types of recorded Sasquatch vocalizations on record, and Bob walked away very impressed with the evidence. As a parting gift, Cliff gave Bob a copy of the 1982 Grays Harbor, Washington footprint cast. Cliff is currently being featured in Animal Planet's new series Finding Bigfoot, once again teaming up with the colleagues James Bobo Fay, Matt Moneymaker, and Renee Holland. Cliff is traveling the country investigating Bigfoot evidence. His expert opinion, level-headed approach, and analytical mind is essential to the team. When numbers need to be extracted for the sake of data analysis or when a footprint needs to be permanently recorded, he is there to offer his unique skills. Cliff augments the credibility of Finding Bigfoot with his passion for data collection and his ability to explain complex ideas in simple fashions. And wow, I meant to read this shorter version of that, but I wasn't able to find it. But welcome, Cliff. It's so great to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Yeah, it's funny to me to listen to all that sort of stuff. So it's kind of like, boy, I got to cut that down a little bit, don't I?
Right. Well, it's very informative, and there's a lot of stuff that we did leave out, but yeah, that's the longer version of it.
Yeah, so it's like I'm reliving it in real time or something.
Yeah, you're seeing this like frame by frame, like movie slideshow in your head. Yeah.
Well, anyway, thanks for having me on. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be on with you. So.
Yeah, no worries. I know we had set up a date earlier, and you were recently married and not used to the family life. So how's married life treating you?
Oh, it's wonderful. It's wonderful. But of course, the married life all depends on who you're married to. And I happen to be, quite infatuated and in love with my wife, of course. So it's wonderful. Just every day is a new adventure, and it gives me reason to stay home and out of the woods.
Right.
I suppose. So. Yeah, she's absolutely wonderful. She keeps me on my toes, and she's an eccentric weirdo, much like myself, and it's a pleasure to be around in every way.
Oh, it's so important to be on a common playing field there.
Oh, yeah. And I met her on the show. I met her on Finding Bigfoot, it turns out. She was a part of the production team. So I've got a pretty wacky lifestyle in general, not just because I'm an eccentric kind of guy with weird interests that bring me here and there, and I'm always doing something. But a lot of my work, of course, is on the road. I do a lot of speaking presentations in other places, other states. So since she was used to the TV lifestyle because she was part of the production team of Finding Bigfoot, she's very understanding about my extended absences at times. When I'm gone for, I do an expedition for 4 days, and then I work with somebody in the woods for another 8 or 9 days, and I got to go out of town the next weekend to go do a talk in, God knows what state. So I'm gone for 10, 14 days at a time. She's very forgiving of that. I'm very thankful for that.
Yeah, it's so important to have a supportive spouse and partner in your life that supports what you're doing and understands what it takes to do what you're doing.
Yeah, it sure helps, because otherwise, it could cause some unwanted friction in a relationship. But yeah. But then again, it takes someone like my wife, like Melissa, to understand and kind of roll with things. So I'm just lucky that we're blessed with each other.
Yeah, and congratulations.
Thanks. We're like a year and a couple months into it. We got married a year ago last June. So yeah, that's
awesome.
the deal.
So you're also into music. What genre do you like, and what instrument do you play?
Oh, well, I'm a guitarist. I have a degree in jazz guitar from Cal State Long Beach. I studied with a guy named Ron Eshte, who's a phenomenal player. He plays 7-string jazz guitar, so I kind of followed along in his footsteps, and I also play 7-string jazz guitar. But I studied jazz because jazz is a fairly complex music, and so I figured. I just like to play the instrument, So I figured if I study jazz and can wrap my head around it and know what to do, I can play anything. And that's proven to be more or less true, because music at the end of the day is music. It starts somewhere, it goes somewhere else, and it comes back, tonally speaking. And if you can understand how it moves around, then you can play any style you want. Now, you asked what my favorite style is. My favorite style isn't necessarily jazz. I like the harmony of jazz. I like studying the jazz harmony thing and applying it to other models, I suppose, of music. The stuff I tend to write and produce and all that sort of stuff on my own for hobbies and stuff is much more angular and quirky and peculiar, I suppose, than just straight ahead jazz would be. And it's not like John Scofield or something like that, or any of those outside players. It's something. It's kind of like if you had I don't even know how to describe it. My music's a little peculiar, I suppose, like everything else about me, I guess. It's kind of like if you, I don't know, you drop a wind-up toy into a vat of blue soup, and then you let it go and to see what it does. I guess that's a good way to describe my music.
Yeah, that's interesting. I want to hear something now. So if you have anything that you could play for us, like a little clip or whatever, that'd be awesome just to get an ideal.
Yeah, I don't know really how to do that, but what I could do is I'm at my computer. I can how about if I just email you something real fast, and if you know how to play it, you're welcome to do so.
Yeah, I could try that.
Of course, I don't know how to put it on the air or anything because I'm talking in I've got a little headphone on and talking to my computer in Skype land. So
right.
yeah, so I don't know. I could do a couple things on the computer, but I don't know how to do that. So
and when I read about you are mastering in jazz as far as music, I automatically thought of Django Reinhardt, like one of the originals. And do you think that he was more jazz, or was he kind of out of his element as well?
Oh, well, Django, if you don't know who listeners, if you don't know who Django Reinhardt is, he was a guitar master, probably 1920s. He kind of played what we call hot jazz, because, back in the 20s and 30s, jazz was not a really respected music in the United States. And it mostly had to do with the racism of our country, particularly back then, although a lot of it has lingered into nowadays too. But back then, it was a different world, and just people of color in general were at best entertainers, and it's really unfortunate. And again, that history is long and ugly. But so because of that, a lot of African American musicians moved to Europe because many European cultures, in this case the Parisian ones in France, were very much further ahead than the United States was at the time as far as race relations and whatnot. And so when jazz spread to Europe and Paris and stuff, the local French people really picked it up quickly, and they said this was great because it was the cutting edge of music at the time. Nowadays, whoever the kids are listening to, they think that's all the cutting edge. But back then in the 20s, it was swing music, and it was and the flavor that arose out of France was called hot jazz, and it's kind of pioneered by Stefan Grappelli, the violin player, and Django Reinhardt, the guitar player. And the music has not been matched, at least in that style. People call it gypsy jazz because Django Reinhardt was in fact ethnically a gypsy. And of course they weren't looked upon fondly in Europe either. But Django was a phenomenal player, and most people don't realize because you listen to this guy and he's the sort of chunk like guitar backing and stuff. But when he's soloing, he's just ripping, he's like up and down the neck one, just flying. But what people don't realize, he only had 2 functional fingers on his left hand
because they were webbed, right?
Well, they were damaged in a fire, I guess. I guess he was involved in some sort of fire as a youth, and it deformed his left hand. And the left hand is what you run up and down the neck on. So all those runs that he was doing, which is faster than I can play cleanly, he was doing with just 2 fingers, which is mind blowing to me because I can't even play that stuff with my 4 fingers. So I don't know. He's really something else.
Yeah, he was pretty amazing. He just kind of stood out there when I thought of it, but like you said, it's a different form of jazz, and he made it more acceptable as far as bringing the black community in.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and
Oh, I lost you. What happened? Hold on. It says you're still on there.
Oh gosh.
Okay, you're back.
Oh, you know what it is? I started uploading a song to an email.
Oh, it's all my fault. It's always my fault. Okay, so hopefully he'll be back around here in just a second. Bigfoot found him. Where's the jack?
I was going to give you?
Oh, yeah. Sorry about that. I totally messed up your end of the program there.
Listen, I live out in the woods, and I have very, very slow internet. And because of that, when I upload things, it takes the time. So I lost you. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense.
Yeah, so anyway, that's what's going that's what's going on right now. So I uploaded a song, and there you go.
Well, I apologize for causing that interference.
Like you, it may happen again. I'm going to throw another song.
Okay, yeah, because you're breaking up quite a bit, but I'm reloading this to see if it's come through yet, which it hasn't. But you're saying that your internet is quite slow, and I understand being out in the boonies how that can be.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I didn't even think of that. Because
Oh man! Last thing I heard was and then you're gone. What have I done?
People, it's almost done. Again, these are only 3 meg files too, so you can imagine how slow my life is.
Yeah, right. You must have patience when dealing with countryside internet.
Here you go. I think we'll be okay now. I just sent off the email to you.
Okay, I'm gonna refresh and see if that comes up.
Yeah, and I didn't even give you the quirky stuff. I just gave you the more. Oh no, I did give you a quirky. Yeah, although, gosh, I don't know if this is going to be the right one. Oh, I should have listened to this one. I'm not sure I sent you the right one, but whatever. I'll figure it out real soon.
Yeah, and we do have breaks, so we can try doing it during one of the breaks. That way we don't mess up our interview here.
Yeah, that might be better.
Yeah.
Well, but this is a pretty casual podcast, it seems, or a radio show anyway. That what we're doing. So anybody who's listening out there, please forgive me for clogging up my bandwidth.
Moonlight. Kevin is asking, what is quirky?
Quirky. Yeah, weird, unusual, but interesting. So maybe he's looking for a definition. But I'll stop uploading things so you can hear me. I'll just upload words.
Okay. Or if you have an acoustic, you can even play one live for us if you like. But it's not the same as like having your band with you,
Well, yeah. I'll just rather send you recorded stuff. But, I've been working on something for a while. I have a music website that most people don't know about because it's not really finished in any sort of way. My webmaster is there's some issues with something on my page or something. My webmaster's perhaps striking his heels a little bit about getting it rolling. So I won't mention who that is or anything. But Yeah, so hopefully in the next like maybe month or something, I'll have a website up where people who are interested in my music, my original music that is, can download songs. And I've been working on it. Was supposed to be up by the beginning of 2018, but things happen, life gets in the way. But hopefully in the next month or two, I'll be able to put that up and start uploading songs for people to download if they choose. And when I say if you choose, something I'm trying to do for my fans, the people who are interested in my music, is offer my music for free, essentially. I mean, it'd be great to make $1 a song or something like that, but at the same time, I understand that some people may not have jobs, or there's issues, or or they're just cheap. I don't care. I'm cool with that. They can download. They will be able to download my music for whatever they want to give me. There's like those pay what you want sort of things. Mm-hmm. Yeah, where you can download digital files. That's what I'm going to do with my music. So, if anybody wants to give me money, they can. If they want my music for free, they can have that too. Heck, if they want to give me $1,000 a song, I strongly encourage you to do that. But I don't really care. I just want people to enjoy my music. So.
Yeah, and that's the important thing. Like they say, music is the universal language. And it's so cool that, you don't have a particular amount that you try to collect. You just like to share your music and the experience, and they can pay what they see fit.
Well, yeah, and I was just going to put it all out there for free, but a lot of my musician friends, and I've got a lot of friends who are professional musicians in various ways, I don't want to undercut them, but I would, but I was listening to an NPR interview with Patti Smythe a couple years back. And, obviously Patti Smythe is, an important figure in punk rock and music history in general, and, feminism and everything else. She's an icon. And she says that's her business model, is that she just puts it out there for free, but pay what you want sort of style, so people can give $1 a song, which I think any song's worth $1, right? But she makes her living on that now. And she was talking about what a blessed feeling it is to just make her living off of the love and generosity of people who want to give her money and support her. And I think that's cool. There's something special and kind about that. And because we all have to make a living somehow. And I'd like to think that, my however many years I was in college is worth something to somebody. So $1 a song doesn't seem so bad. But again, don't have to pay it. And the model I would really like this to develop into is people can download the song for free. And if they like it, they can give me $1. And if they don't like it, they don't have to give me anything. I think that would be really cool. So I'll kind of try to write that up onto the website when it's rolling, to say, yeah, if you love it, come back later and give me $1. And if you hate it, don't bother. Or if you think it's mediocre, don't bother. But anybody who really likes it, yeah, give me 50 cents. I don't care.
So I have a couple of them downloaded to my Google Drive, and you sent, is it Chewy Food or Chew Food?
Chewy Food. I'm not sure I gave you the right one though, because there was a scratch version I might have had in there. So, anyway, but that might be it. That might be it. So you can see if that's, you can play it, and I'll let you know if that's the one that I finished or if that's the one in progress.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and play Chewy Food. Smaller.
Yeah, yeah. Smaller. Oh yeah, that's it. Good.
dry food out in a bowl for him.
So as you can see, it's not exactly straight ahead jazz, but anybody who is familiar with music and particularly harmony would probably recognize that the song has that angular, clunky sort of octagonal wheel on a wheelbarrow sort of feel because of the whole tone scale. Every harmonic movement in the song is a half step in the whole tone scale, which gives it that. Except for one, there's one whole tone jump in the entire song. Everything else is a half step, and then they're just whole tone scales, which is a very ethereal sort of harmonic device that was used in the impressionist stage of music, like by Debussy and folks like that back in the day. And I just love the sound of it, so I figured I'm going to write a whole song in the whole note scale. And it's called Chewy Food because my roommates at the time had a Chihuahua whose name was Chewy, and they wrote directions. They went out of town years and years ago. They went out of town and left me written directions on how to take care of the dog. Leave dry food out in a bowl for him, and a half a can of wet food at 5 p.m. And that's the lyrics to the song. And that's why it's called Chewy Food. And the care and feeding of a chew isn't really much to do. All you need is water and some food and love.
Yeah, and we got a few comments on that. Dale said, very, very Zappa. And
yeah, I get that comparison a lot, I suppose. Zappa might be one of the best comparisons. There's a certain Primus sort of thing going on if I distorted that. And yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, I'd like to create music that sounds like an army of gremlins furiously fixing your mechanical hot air balloon underwater.
Right. And then let's see, Ryan was asking, is that a xylophone in jazz? Quirky.
Indeed. Yeah, both. Yeah, and of course, I played all the instruments on that one, except for the piano. I'm not that good of a piano player. I'm really a stringed instrument, sort of guy, like guitar and stuff. So my friend Nate Murphy plays that. In fact, he sits in on a lot of my tunes because I just don't have the piano chops,
Yeah, and then we have Kevin asking, will your music attract Sasquatch?
I think any music really attracts Sasquatch because really what like, and we can segue into the Bigfoot thing because of this. Like if you look at the Finding Bigfoot show, for example, I get a lot of criticism from very knowledgeable hunters, so that's not the way to do it. You need to sit up in a tree stand for, and be quiet and decent yourself and all that other stuff. And well, yeah, duh, no kidding. But the deal is we're making TV, and somebody sitting silently in a tree stand for 8 hours isn't good TV.
Right.
And you also got to think that, on a night investigation, when we're filming one of those, if it's Bobo and I, you see Bobo and I on camera, but who's holding the camera? There's a cameraman, right? There's a sound guy with like a mixer or a sound girl with a mixer strapped to him or her, and there's a producer, maybe even another one. So there's like 5 of us out there. And every 45 minutes, we have to stop and change the tapes and change the SD cards and check the batteries to make sure that we don't run out of batteries and blah, blah, blah. So we're a circus out in the woods. There's no way for us to be stealthy. So what we often do, and frankly it makes better television anyway, is we go big. We do ridiculous things out in the woods. And, on several of the shows, I played instruments. I played guitar. I remember in Oklahoma, and I played a bass in Illinois out in the woods, or Bobo threw a rave in Idaho. You just go down the list of all these ridiculous things that these hunters out there turn up their noses and poo-poo us about. But they're so into themselves, like that's all, because people only see themselves. They look at other people and they really see themselves, whether they're criticizing me or otherwise. And the hunters who rightfully criticize us, that certainly would not be a way to hunt deer, for example. But we're not hunting deer. We're hunting, in quotation marks, the most intelligent thing in the woods. And then we're trying to exploit their Sasquatch's one and only weakness, which is their curiosity, because they're intelligent. And so their whole gig is to know exactly what's going on in their environment at all times. So if we make a big hullabaloo out there, if we're making noise and doing something really unusual, if one's around, and depending on the Sasquatch, because they're all individuals just like we are, or just like our dogs are, or cats or whatever, they're very likely going to come around and check us out, depending on, that particular Sasquatch. So, and the more interesting we are, perhaps the longer it'll stick around. And which is, to get back to the original question, music, my music or any music, Indian drumming or chanting in the woods is great. A lot of Native American people tell me that, Sasquatches show up to their ceremonies and dances to the woods. And I think it's because something interesting is happening out there. And the whole gig of a Sasquatch is to know what's going on in its realm, in its territory, and literally its life could depend on it. So it's pretty reliable.
Yeah, I find that really interesting, and I do agree that, even certain animals out in the wild are attracted to that noise. Like, what is that? And it is very interesting and different, and we had a couple people out there really enjoying hearing your music on a late night show. They're like, wow, jazz on a late night show. That's so cool.
Yeah, when we get a break or whatever, I'll send a couple others at you, because but before I moved to Portland, Oregon, I live out in the woods outside of Portland on the slopes of Mount Hood right now. But before I moved up here about 10 years ago, I was playing in a band, and the band's name was Larry, because we thought that was a nice name. And but the singer for the band, actually, all the people in the band kind of went on to bigger and better things. Like the guitar player, one of my best friends. All these people are my best friends, and what a joy it was to play music with my best friends, basically. Like the guitar player, Bob Easton, he went on to play. He sits in with Funkadelic. He sits in with Fishbone, the guys from Fishbone, and records with them. And he plays with Trulio Disgracius, and he has a great, fantastic band that combines like really hardcore 70s funk with Brazilian samba music. And they're just a fantastic band called Delta Nove. And to this day, Bob's one of my best friends. I talk to him as much as I can. But he's one of these working musician guys. The singer for the band went on to much larger things. Monique Powell, who's the lead singer for this 90s ska band called Save Ferris. They were really popular in the 90s because they had a couple big hit songs. They were in some movies. They're the ones that covered that 80s song, Come On Eileen, but they did it ska. That's Mo and her band. And she's playing again. She's revamped the band, and she's got some songs on the charts recently. The bass player, Ed Campworth, he's playing with the Long Beach Dub All-Stars, the spin-off band from Sublime. So all these guys went on. Oh, Tim Bender, the drummer, he played in a band called Death by Stereo for a while. And me, I went on to be on TV looking for Sasquatch. So,
Right.
yeah. But I'll send you one of those songs as well, so you can enjoy that as well, with Monique singing, because she's just a wonderful person with a tremendously beautiful voice. She's insanely talented. So you can hear a little bit more music maybe later in the show then.
For sure. And I still have another song that you had uploaded and sent to me. But before I go there, Joe was saying, I can see Bigfoot maybe doing percussion, but I think in addition to having big feet, they would have big hands and find it difficult to play guitar and piano.
Well, you probably wouldn't want to dance with one, like a Bigfoot square dance sort of thing, probably stepping all over you. But then again, they're so stealthy. They may not. It's hard to say,
Kevin was wondering, what do you think of Miami Sound Machine's newer stuff?
I don't know, man. I don't get out so much. So, I don't have any comment on that. So I'm sorry about that.
Well, on that note, we're going to play your next song.
Okay, cool.
We'll let the listeners listen to that because they're really digging it.
Nice.
And this one's called I Don't Believe.
Not about Sasquatches.
That's awesome. I love expanding my horizons as far as like different topics and music. You know, everybody's like, "What do you listen to?" And I'm like, "Everything."
Yeah, it's hard to categorize myself in a whole lot of ways because I mean, or anybody, you know, because it's unfair. The minute you say you are something, it implies that you're not these other things. But who wants to limit oneself?
So as a kid, were you like the rest of us? Did you listen to Dr. Demento and Weird Al and all these... Yeah.
Yeah, I remember listening to Dr. Demento's Top 10. I think it came on at 9 or something, and if I remember right, I think on KMET in Southern California. And their usual programming is really heavy metal sort of stuff, you know, and all that. But, you know, I remember Dr. Demento. I mostly listened to the Top 10 because not only did I love music, of course, but I just loved comedy in general, and I still love comedy, you know. So seeing like just a few weeks ago, Weird Al Yankovic got a Hollywood Walk of Fame star, and Dr. Demento was there, and awesome. I didn't even know he was still alive. You know,
right?
I had no idea. He was still, yeah, and how cool is that? And he's got the top hat and everything, and so I said, "Oh, dude, I got to." Yeah, so I immediately found him on Twitter and stuff, and started following him just in case, you know. So yeah, he's a very Dr. Demento, and tangentially because of that, Weird Al, etc. Kind of an undercurrent sort of influence in my life in a lot of ways. Because, you know, if you listen to the lyrics of any of these songs, I told you the lyrics for the first song is about feeding a chihuahua, you know, and the second song is just about, it's not really about anything. All my songs are about nothing in a Zen sort of way. The important nothing, not the vacuous, empty-headed, waste of time nothing, but the kind of nothing that is there when you remove everything else. The kind of nothing that you get when your mind is empty but you're aware. You know, that sort of stuff. And it's actually more about how there are no mistakes. Like the opening line of that song is, "I don't believe in lemons." And that's a play on words, of course, because, again, comedy and double meaning and stuff is important, I think, at least in my song lyrics. I don't believe in lemons because I don't believe in mistakes. You know, like I was thinking like a lemon, like a car. You know, like, oh, my car's a lemon. It sucks. Yeah, no, I don't believe in lemon. I don't believe in normalcy. I don't believe it's fruitful. I don't believe a thing. I don't, and then the next line, it goes even further. It says, "I don't know what I'm saying." Yeah. I don't know what I know.
Yeah, I don't know what I know.
Yeah, I don't know I don't know when I'm leaving, and I don't know where I'd go. You know,
Joe is asking, which do you do first, your music or your lyrics?
Depends. It depends. Sometimes I get a good lyric. Like I was out Bigfooting at the Blueberry Bog a couple years ago, like 2 years ago, and the Blueberry Bog is one of my best Bigfoot spots. A lot of stuff happens there, and it's up here in Mountain Hood National Forest, and nobody really works it. And I found this spot for Bigfooting because it looked like it had all the ingredients for Bigfoot. The only thing it was missing was sighting reports. And there had never been sighting reports there. So I started camping there, and sure enough, Bigfoots were there. You know, it took a couple times, but it turns out they show up there sometimes. And so anyway, I was out at the Blueberry Bog, and there's this big marsh there, and I was walking around the marsh, and there's no creek or anything feeding this marsh. It's all rainwater. And then at the end of the season, you know, if it's a real dry year, like in September or something, it dries up and there's no more water there. But it was earlier in the year, it was in July. And I was walking around the marsh, and there's all these pollywogs everywhere. Just thousands and thousands and thousands. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if there were 500,000 or 1 million pollywogs. It was just mind-boggling everywhere I went, and which makes sense because, you know, a month later there's that many frogs everywhere. It's ridiculous. These little tiny cute little guys. It's the kind of place I don't want to go in the beginning of August because you literally cannot step through the meadow without stepping on them. It's impossible.
No.
Yeah, and so it's like I'm guilt-ridden by walking, you know. So, but anyway,
you have to shuffle.
Right. So I was walking around the Blueberry Bog one day, and for some reason, words came into my head, you know, like song lyrics, basically. And I remember the lyrics later fashioned into something like, going to the ape bog in a fog, tripping on some pollywogs.
Heck yes.
You know, yeah, and I love I like the sound of words, because words are just small mouth noises. They're just noises we make, and then hopefully the meaning I put in them matches your dictionary inside your head, and you can get them. They're just small mouth noises. They're symbolic gestures to try to convey meaning, and when you can make those sound cool, I think that's extra special. And in fact, I'm looking. There's a song I wrote years and years and years ago for that band called Larry, and it's just about the utter what was the word the difficulty, I guess, in communicating, because words are ridiculous. And so like some of the lyrics are in there are like sang a thing that rang of orangutan boomerangs.
Right.
Or and it's just I don't know. I like the way words sound, no matter what meaning they convey sometimes. So when I come across something like going to the ape bog in a fog, tripping on some pollywogs, I say, oh, that's clever. But other times I'm just goofing around on guitar and playing a lick or something like that, and I think it could be a good hook for a song. So I'm not sure if I have a method that one way dominates the other, because I'm such a haphazard and chaotic sort of guy in general.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, as far as like thoughts and stuff like that. So
right, and the way things come together, like you don't always control that. It just pops in your head, and you got a tune or you got some lyrics, and that you can put a tune to. So it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and I understand. It's kind of like, again, it's kind of like the Finding Bigfoot thing. There's a certain responsibility that's inherent, I should say, in making music, in my opinion, because as you said earlier, music is like the language of the universe. It's like the language of God. It's something special that, regardless of the culture, music plays an important part. And so there's something sort of on a base level there, that there's something about music that unites or kind of almost makes us human in a way. Because my dog Sochi, she doesn't enjoy music. It's a human thing, like my fish don't enjoy music. I don't know if Bigfoots do or not. It seems they're interested, but I don't know if they enjoy it. So it seems to be a human thing, and there's a certain level of responsibility there, to create something that is enjoyable, but perhaps, you listen to these silly lyrics or whatever, perhaps looking a little bit deeper than that. If I'd like that perhaps my music, which is essentially art, I think, can be interpreted by the listener in a variety of ways that would make it meaningful to them. So, I mean, even though my songs or whatever may have meaning to me about that particular time in my life or that thing, or if it's just pretty like interesting sounding words, tripping on some pollywogs and the ape bog sort of thing. If I can imbue those words with a slightly deeper level, then I'll consider my life well spent, and I guess that's the same thing with Bigfoot too, because with the Finding Bigfoot thing, there were a few shows here and there, Monster Quest or whatever, a few shows here and there, Mysterious Encounters that featured Sasquatches in the last 20 years, but for whatever reason, Finding Bigfoot kind of brought it back in the mainstream in a huge way. I mean, we coined the word Squatch. Everybody says Squatch because of our show, essentially, because we were the people saying it. We've had an effect. But when I was 8 years old or something, I was born in 1970. So when I was like 6 or 8 years old and I was watching In Search Of on television, or all these quirky documentaries.
Leonard Nimoy.
Yeah, exactly. I had no idea who would know, of course, what sort of effect that would have on my later life. And I realized at one time that Finding Bigfoot was that. It was the In Search of this particular decade. And somewhere out there, there's probably a little Cliff sitting there watching the screen who's going to be in my shoes, in another 30 or 40 years. And there's a certain responsibility with that. So I take the things I love, my music, the Bigfoot thing, etc. There's a responsibility that goes with that. about passing something on to whoever is benefiting from that. So I'm not
For
sure I have a
sure.
point. That's the message.
Well, yeah. Well, that, you're putting that message out there. You have an outlet, and you're able to put this data and information and this thought into people's heads, kind of opening their minds. And like you said, there could be a little Cliff out there watching it that's going to be the future generation Sasquatch hunter or Bigfoot hunter, or, who knows where we'll be in those days. Like maybe someday we'll have a Harry and the Hendersons that, wants to have that relationship with a human and is curious to the point where they want to partake in the everyday life of the human being, which is kind of far-fetched, but it's interesting, like you said, where it puts you. And like Cody was saying, music is the language that supersedes all language barriers. So it's so awesome how, you put that out there and different creatures are drawn to it. And like Bigfoot, their main way of communicating, I think, is banging wood against trees, or logs or sticks against trees. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think they speak, honestly. That I don't say that real. They have. I think the evidence is strong enough at this point that I'm comfortable saying that they are either speaking in some sort of language, or at least a proto-language. I'm not exactly sure how advanced English is, honestly. Don't get me wrong, but or any language, honestly. But I've spoken to enough people that have heard these things seemingly interacting vocally. And not just like, woo, not just yelling from the hilltop or something like those long distance sort of location finders or whatever they're conveying, but like close to each other. I've heard people who are convinced they've heard Sasquatches. I've spoken to witnesses that are convinced they've heard Sasquatches whispering to each other. And that fact that they're here's a good story. There's this woman who a teacher, it turns out, on the coast of Oregon. She was in her classroom. She was an elementary school teacher. And, of course, I was an elementary school teacher at one time as well. I taught elementary school, 4th, 5th, and 6th grade for 14 years before television grabbed me and threw me into that, chaotic punch bowl. But this woman teaches on the coast of Oregon, and like a lot of elementary school teachers, or teachers in general, I shouldn't just say elementary school, because I know plenty of teachers from all grade levels. They work real late. I didn't work very late, but yet I somehow didn't leave work until 6, even though I got there at 7. So I was working 10 or 11-hour days every day, pretty much. But she worked even later than I did. She was in her classroom till 9 or 10 o'clock at night, apparently, this woman. And she played music real loud because she's basically the last teacher. And then one day she heard people talking outside of her classroom. And she lives along – or she didn't live. She's in the school's along this creek pushed up against the coast range of Oregon. And she heard people talking, and she goes, "What is that?" She's looking out the window. She turns the music down a little bit, and then she sees 2 huge, hairy figures walk outside of her classroom at dusk. One of them was so tall that she only saw up to the shoulders, or like the lower part of the head, the chin, So these things were like 8.5, and the one was about 7 feet tall, and just walked by the window. And she went like, "What?" And then I soon got a hold, or she got a hold of me actually, and it happened. And she had seen another one at school like about 4 or 5 months later, and has heard them a couple other times. But anyway, she said that these things it was the language that caught her attention. She called it a language, and now from her, again, I mentioned earlier in this show that we only see ourselves, right? Whenever we look at other people, and that guy's an asshole. Well, that means that because you've been that yourself at one point. We only see ourselves out there in the world. So she compared the language, quote unquote, that these things were using to a native language, a Native American language, and Vietnamese, like a Southeast Asian language. Now, the reason she said that is because it turns out that one of her close relatives, I think it was her father-in-law or something, is a coastal Alaskan Native American. From like Prince of Wales Island or one of those islands up there. And then somebody else on the other side of the family was Vietnamese. So she had been exposed to those kinds of languages. And she says that whatever these Bigfoots were the sounds they were making strongly resembled like a mixture of those two things. Oh, and interestingly enough, with clicking noises. like the Hausa people from Africa, like the Bushmen that make those clicking noises in their language. She says there were pops and clicks in the language that these things were using as well. And with that much detail, and I understand that's a lot of interpretation, because there's a huge difference between observation and interpretation. So I get that there's a lot of interpretation in there. But there's a lot of detail from people who hear these other sounds frequently. It makes me think that, well, these things are probably just – and she's not the only witness that I've spoken to, by the way. But it's enough to convince me that these things are saying something to one another. Now, what they're saying, I don't know. How complex of a message it is, I don't know either. But I'm convinced they're communicating on some level, and much more so than just like "Whoa!" from the hilltop to find out where the other ones in the neighborhood are. Like they're saying something more profound than that. Maybe it's as simple as, where's there a good clam digging site, or where do you think the deer have gone? Maybe it's something that simple, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's something a little bit more profound, which is why I think it's so cool to be studying this.
I hate to cut you off, but we do have to go to our first break.
Oh, yeah. You got to cut me off. I'll just ramble on forever.
Right. So you guys don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with Cliff.
Looking for nighttime adventure? Old school radio that delves into everything out of the norm? Then check us out at Spaced Out Radio. This is Dave Scott. Every Monday through Friday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, we're going to take you on a wild ride ranging from conspiracies to true crime and every ghost, alien, and Sasquatch story in between. We're always live, and we're always interactive with you. So join us at spacedoutradio.com, where together, we own the night.
Hey, guess what? You can now get your brand new Spaced Out Radio swag at spacedoutradio.com. We've brought the store back with all new items for you to pick out and pick up for yourself, your family, or friends. T-shirts, hoodies, hats, we got it all. All you have to do is head to our website and click on Store. Choose what you want and it's shipped to you. The Spaced Out Radio store is right there for you. Come shop with us at spacedoutradio.com. Then we can own the night together.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
On the first Tuesday of every month, I encourage you to come along for a journey with me, Geraldine Orozco, on The Spiritual You. Together, we will take a look at how to access the highest expression of yourself and change your life. Consciousness, ET contact, health, and wellness, we can talk about it all. So come along for a spiritual ride with me, Geraldine Orozco, on The Spiritual You, only on Spaced Out Radio.
Coming soon to our website, spacedoutradio.com, is the SOR Space Travelers Club. For just $5 a month, you can get into a private area on our site where you can hang with other listeners in our chat room, post in our forum, and check out a bunch of exclusive content and store that won't be found anywhere else, including a nightly after-show party with Dave. It's going to be the best $5 a month you're going to spend. The SOR Space Travelers, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Are you tired of being blocked, shadow banned, or placed in jail for simply posting your thoughts on social media? Social Media Freedom can take care of that for you. Social Media Freedom is the newest and one of the best free new apps that allows you the freedom to post what you want, when you want. It takes seconds to download from your app store. Come join the tribe at Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
If you're heading to Vancouver, make sure you stop by the official bar of Spaced Out Radio, the Moose Vancouver. It's the place to party in YVR. At the corner of Nelson and Granville, the Moose Vancouver is always up to speed with a kitchen staff that serves great food. All food on the menu, $6.95 to $8.95. There's a reason the Moose Vancouver is recognized as one of the hottest spots on the West Coast. Get your horns up for the Moose Vancouver.
Hey, this is Canadian Paranormal Investigator Mike Moore. The third Wednesday of every month, I'll be teaming up with Dave Scott to bring you Ghosts of the Great White North. Each month, we will bring on guests from across Canada to discuss their ghostly encounters. Canada is a paranormal hotbed with stories you've never heard, so we're going to bring them to you. So get comfy on your Chesterfield, grab a donut, and join us, eh?
A timepiece is a reflection of who you are, and what better way to show off the real you than with an Escape watch. Escape is a lifestyle brand accessorizing your days and nights. Choose to escape and create the life of discovery that you deserve. Dream, play, unite with your own personalized Escape watch. Head to escapewatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
We're bringing scientific thought to the paranormal. Hi there, this is Spaced Out Radio scientist Chris Cogswell. Join me, Chris Zuger, and Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month, where we break down the who from the woo when it comes to everything paranormal. We'll investigate and try to bring sensible answers to those straight and sometimes outlandish questions people have. Hey, not everything has an answer, but we'll do our best. Listen in to Reality Paranormal only on Spaced Out Radio.
Hello, this is your guitar man, Ron Bumblefoot Thal, and I have to tell you, I love the response I get for Little Brother is Watching from Spaced Out Radio fans. It's amazing how music can inspire and make people think deeper about what's going on in the supernatural world. You can head over to my website, bumblefoot.com, to check out my music, my guitar workshops, my touring, even check out some of the hot sauces that I'm working on. And make sure you keep on listening, because with Spaced Out Radio, you know Little Brother is watching.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
You can follow Tessa on Twitter at TessaTNT, on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio, and our website is spacedoutradio.com. Now, back to Spaced Out Weekend host, Tessa Nicole Thomas.
Here's a sound again, voices dancing in my head, smile wide, drowning slowly as the echoes rise.
You guys, welcome back, and thanks so much for joining us tonight. Tonight we have Cliff Barackman on, and we're actually talking about Bigfoot. And of course, we always take the first hour a bit slow because we're waiting for everyone to file in one by one as if they're going on to Noah's Ark. But I'm going to share another song of Cliff's here really quick. And Cliff, welcome back. I'm so glad to have you on.
Oh, it's nice to be had.
All right. I get that a lot. All right. Let me play this song for you guys really quick, and it's called Beatrice. Very nice. And that kind of brings me to Joe's question. He is asking, have you ever gotten any Bigfoot response from music?
No. But what tends to happen, that 1 out of 10 times or whatever, is that play music for a while, do a couple night walks, or maybe somebody else walks around, or maybe hear a knock or something, and on the night walk, maybe make some sounds and get a reply or something, that sort of thing. So I wouldn't think they respond to the music, or at least I've never had them respond to the music, but sometimes they let themselves or let their presence be known in the context of the music.
And Rano was asking, what you taught. I'm guessing science. What were you a teacher of?
Everything. I was an elementary school teacher. I did a little bit of 4th, a lot of 5th, and my last year of teaching before the TV show, I taught 6th grade. So I taught everything. Reading. I taught from remedial up to advanced readers. I taught science, of course, and social studies and math, and PE in a lot of cases. Everything basically. Taught the little guys and gals how to be appropriate. I was with them for 6 or 8 hours a day. So not only did I teach them the subject matter that is mandated by law, etc., but I tried to teach them a little bit about curiosity and kindness and the love of learning. Teachers do a whole lot more than just the curriculum, for good or ill. And I tried to make sure that everything I did was for the good.
That's awesome. And it's so important to mind those small minds to be able to mold them.
Yeah. And to be fair, I learned so much from them, because to be an effective teacher, you have to demonstrate and model and instill influence and instill the love of learning. Like, life isn't a static thing. Look at whatever you're interested in, you can always go deeper, and those deeper delves into whatever it is, music in my case, or paleoanthropology in my case, or whatever, brings to you other avenues of study. Life is just this never-ending mystery you're never going to get to the bottom of, and if you can express a love of living to your students, and maybe a couple of them walk away with it, then that's, like I said earlier, a life well lived.
It's amazing what kids can teach us, and the simple little things that they see that we kind of overlook because we're so busy looking at. They're pretty amazing.
Yeah. Just like, I guess it was in September. I don't really know. I'm not good at like holidays and schedules and stuff. But there apparently National Teachers Day or something was recently, maybe a month ago or something. And I saw that on Twitter. I'm pretty active on Twitter, more so than my other social media accounts. But I saw that on Twitter, and so I took that opportunity to thank my students because they have been some of the most influential teachers upon me.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, they're just so open-minded and pure, and not tainted like the rest of us as far as like things we've learned throughout the years. Like, they just have that fresh approach to life. I was asking, with your female coworker, did there appear to be a back and forth conversation between the Bigfoot?
My female coworker. Could you? I don't understand.
You were talking about she was staying late and she's playing her music loud and she saw one walk by.
Okay. I'm sorry. That's what confused me. She was not a coworker. She taught at a different school.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but no, she was just this random teacher who teaches on the coast of Oregon and who contacted me. I just, like I said, we only see ourselves. I probably brought it too close to home made it sound like she was teaching with me, but she wasn't. But I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question for me?
Dell was wondering, did there appear to be a back and forth conversation between the Bigfoot?
Yes, absolutely. And that's one of the interesting things about this language idea that, like, I don't see any other way around it. I think they're talking to each other, because not only did this woman say that there were two distinct voices, one was lower pitched than the other. You can you can listen for yourself on the Ron Moorhead recordings and the Al Berry recordings, the Sierra Sound stuff, recorded in the Sierra Nevada mountains of California back in the early 1970s. I think if you look up, what is the URL? Bigfoot Sounds, or I don't think it's Sierra Sounds. I guess Bigfoot Sounds. The Ron Moorhead website anyway. And he listened to those recordings. You can hear there's more than one individual. And a guy named Scott Nelson, who is a retired naval cryptolinguist. A lot of fancy words there, but what that means is like he was in the Navy. He was in the Navy, and his job was to decipher codes, secret codes of, the quote unquote enemy. Although I still have not met an enemy, but that was his whole gig. So after he retired, he started listening to these Bigfoot recordings, and he got interested in them and started studying them pretty in depth. And he has discerned that there are at least two distinct individuals shooting vocalizations back and forth to one another, but in such rapid succession that it's difficult to discern them. But there's two of them there. And he even went deeper. He slowed down the recordings dramatically and tried to write them out and decipher them and look for patterns. And sure enough, there are repeated phonemes. Now, a phoneme, another fancy word, is a fancy way to say sounds. Like my name is Cliff. So k is a phoneme. Ol is a phoneme. I is a phoneme, and so is f. So I have 4 phonemes in my name. Cliff, 4 sounds.
So interesting.
So he found phonemes in these recordings that were repeated in patterns. Now, that's all words are. Words, like I said, are just small noises that you make with your mouth, and the patterns of those noises repeat, and those what is essentially at the base level what a word is. So he found patterns in this Sasquatch vocalization, and therefore, are those words? It seems like it, but we don't know. So, and on top of that, there were 2 of them going back and forth with these repeated phoneme patterns. So, yeah, man, they're talking. I'm pretty sure. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, they've got to have some form of language and communication, and perhaps the banging on trees is like more of a territorial thing or a long distance, like, walkie-talkies or whatnot.
Well, yeah. You know what? You know how like on the show we go woo and see if they call back or whatever. When I was in Vietnam, camping in the jungle, because I had the camping segment on Finding Bigfoot and we're filming there. So I was out, 5 or 8 miles or something like that from the trailhead with a producer who was filming me, and then like 5 or 8, maybe 10 people, men and women, out there camping with me, dealing with things, gathering shrimp from the river for dinner and stuff like that. When we were out there filming that, I would do my Bigfoot calls. Woo! But it was the second day that I was there, that we were walking around during the day, looking at stuff, filming the show and stuff, that I heard woos, like woo, out in the woods. I go, what? And it, before long, we stumble across a small band of people, of men in this case, about 3 or 4 of them. They were out hunting. Well, they were gathering is what they were doing. They weren't necessarily hunting, but these people live out in the jungle. I think they told me there were 14 different ethnic groups, like subcategories of Vietnamese living in the woods, wild. I mean, not wild like what we picture, like Stone Age men or something like that. I mean, they're wearing their Adidas tracksuits and stuff. They were out, but they were out in the woods, living out there in whatever they gathered and made, and living in huts and stuff. And to locate one another, they were doing sounds that sounded like Bigfoots to me. Which I think is interesting, because that shows it's a hominin thing. It's a hominoid thing. Like we weren't the first hominins to locate each other like that. Sasquatches were doing it too, back in the day. And I also realized at that point that all my vocalizations weren't going to amount to anything out in the jungles of Vietnam, because guys could be answering me, people.
Right. You're like, wait a minute, that's not a Sasquatch at all.
Yeah.
And Dale was saying, I don't know if I'm saying it correctly. Phonemes,
yeah.
Yeah, they're provocative. And then Joe was saying, or asking Cliff, were the phonemes validated on a spectrogram?
I think spectrograms, and I could be wrong about this. I don't, I may talk all fancy, but I don't know very much. Yeah, if I remember right, spectrograms are like the wavelength, like how many times the vocal cords vibrate a second. And I could be wrong about that, but no, as far as I know. But you can look up Scott Nelson, Sasquatch vocalizations, or maybe samurai chatter is the common word for it because people think that it sounds like a Japanese language, but angry, so they called it a samurai thing. Not that samurais would be angry; they're just warriors, But
they gotta sound
if you look up.
mean.
Oh, I know. Yeah, but it's all in the interpretation. But if you look up samurai chatter, you can probably find Scott Nelson's work. So you can read.
I checked out some of his works because I was looking at him as a guest because he's actually like a Bigfoot linguist or whatever. He's figuring out their language or what they're trying to say or whatnot, and listened to a few of his recordings, and it was very interesting.
Oh yeah. He's a heck of a nice guy. And I had a couple beers with him a few years ago, and we really hit it off. Really nice guy. I met him at a conference or something. He's done more work than anybody, and who. I don't know if he's right 100% of the time, but he's done more work than anybody else I know. So I'm going to defer to him for now.
Let's see. So your team for finding Bigfoot consisted of Matt Moneymaker, James Bobo Fay, yourself, and Renee. Is it Holland?
Holland. Yeah, Renee Holland.
So Joe was asking, did Renee ever come closer to your side of the Bigfoot argument, or did she stay more on the skeptical side?
Both, I think, is a good answer for that. And I want to speak for Renee. She's a lovely lady and very, very nice. But I'm not sure where she is on the Bigfoot spectrum at this point. Because she so often said that Bigfoots don't exist or whatever, but sometimes she spoke like they did. They tend to do this, she might say that. And I had been out on night investigations where she had seen eyes shine like maybe a dozen or more times. One time she saw a 7-foot shadow run across the road. But I don't know where she is as far as her belief in Sasquatches as a biological thing. I've seen that she's written on the Finding Bigfoot fan page or whatever on Facebook that she thinks they're spirit animals, but I don't really know what she means by that. So I don't. You'd have to ask Renee. I don't want to speak for her, because I barely know what I think, let alone her.
So you were talking about Sasquatch, and your theory is it's a bipedal great ape. And Joe in the chat room was saying apes don't contain a voice box for speech like humans, so he was curious if the Bigfoot voice evidence was put on a spectrogram that would indicate such a thing. Like, are they different as far as their voice box goes compared to an ape-like creature?
Well, to be fair, we're an ape-like creature. In fact, we're grouped in with the other great apes. Biologically speaking, I don't really differentiate us. I think that's a human concoction to make us feel better in a lot of ways. You can read a lot of the anthropological, books or whatever. The Naked Ape, was probably the first and the best known. But yeah, we're essentially great apes. Is what we are. We're just special in some ways. And one of the ways that makes us special is a little bit of different, morphology, I guess, in the neck. It's easier for us to make sounds. But really, the thing that catalyzed that, I believe, is our fine motor control. It turns out that I think there's something about the hyboid or something like that, the hyboid bone. I don't know much about the anatomy of the neck. I don't know about the anatomy of speech. But I do know a little bit about the capacity for symbolic thought. Mm-hmm. And that is really, I think, the key to language in a lot of ways, because if you draw a picture of a horse and everybody knows it's a horse because it looks like one, that is symbolism. And that's something that other animals don't seem to do. Or if they do it, they don't do it very well. But humans have excelled at that. And really, speech is just that. It's imbuing sounds with meaning, that everybody buys into so we can communicate because we have the same lexicon, the same dictionary. I think it has more to do with that. And also, from what I understand, the other known apes, and I have to say known because there's plenty of apes around, not all of them have been discovered yet. Mm-hmm. They also lack, apparently, a part of the brain that has something to do with the fine motor control that one needs to manipulate the tongue in various shapes to make noises and stuff. And again, I really don't know a whole lot about this. So you have me speculating and, or like at least pushing my boat away from the dock in a lake that I'm not very familiar with navigating. So be aware of that. I mean, I don't mind talking about it, but I really don't. I'm not trying to shy away from it. Just I want to, give the listener a heads up that, fact check me on this stuff. I can talk about some things with authority, but this is not one of them. But I can speculate because it's fun.
Right. And I was watching a documentary the other day that was saying, like, our voice boxes are so different from anything else in the world. Like, it was specifically built for us, and perhaps because we do have that knowledge, the way to articulate, like you were saying, our mind is able to wrap around that and be able to manipulate it and get those words out to build a language, so to speak.
Yeah. I can't speak to the morphology, but I am interested in the history and evolution of consciousness, and certainly, like, I've read a lot of stuff from Ian Tattersall, for example. He's, I believe, the head of the Department of Paleoanthropology at the Natural History Museum in New York, and several of his books kind of feature the idea of what it is to be human. Compared to not only the other animals that we can look around and see today, but also our ancestors. And he speaks a lot to this, and he's kind of zeroed in on symbolic thought and that sort of thing. I'm not sure that's all there is to it, and speech has a lot to do with it. Anyway, I don't know. I'm kind of rambling at this point, but
no
I think you hear. Yeah, I think you hear where I was going. So
yeah, I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Yeah,
and Del. Oh, go ahead.
No, nothing. Go ahead.
Del was saying, "Yay, paleoanthropology!"
I'm a big fan, man.
Yeah.
In fact,
can you tell us what exactly that is?
Yeah. Well, anthropology. Ology is the study of, and somewhere within the sounds, anthro is the word for man. So it's the study of man, basically. And there's two stems, I guess, of that tree. One is cultural anthropology, like the culture of people, because human culture is, different than a lot of the cultures we see in the rest of the animal kingdom. And also physical anthropology, which is the study of the apes and human as part of that biological, representation. And paleo, I'm not sure how to translate that. I'm sure one of your listeners can tell me, but it's basically fossils. So if you look, if you're interested in the history of humankind and our ancestors, Neanderthals or Australopithecus or Homo habilis or like how we became human, then that's paleoanthropology, because you have to study the fossils of these human ancestors. And of course, Sasquatches. They could be some sort of, orangutan-related ape sort of thing that somehow had parallel evolution and developed the ability to walk on two legs like we did. They could be that, and we don't really know what they are. But since there are already a dozen or so species of man-ape sort of things out there in the fossil record, I think it's useful for Bigfooters to explore them and learn about them, not only because it sheds a little bit of light on oneself, because we all came from these things, but one of them is likely a common ancestor between us and Sasquatches. And if you can learn about them, you can learn a little bit about Bigfoots as well, because whether or not they are directly related to Sasquatches, and I personally think they are, but you can learn about how an animal, different than human, because we're clearly animals as well. I mean, we're not plants after all, right? An animal like that can survive. And if you can learn about them, then I think you can learn something about Sasquatches. And I think that's important. So paleoanthropology is the study of human ancestors through their fossils, and just to see what we can learn about them.
Nice. And last week, on the after party, we were talking about different Homo species, and there are so many out there. Homo Erectus, Homo, et cetera, et cetera. There's so many Homo species and variations of the Homo sapiens, so to speak, in different levels. And I don't know if it's because they're different offshoots or it's just interbreeding with certain different tribes or whatnot, but it's pretty interesting. A lot of people think perhaps Bigfoot is an offshoot of Homo erectus. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I don't think that. I know that Ray Crow, who was a friend of mine, he's dead now, unfortunately, but he was a strong proponent of that. And another guy I know has recently brought that up to me as well, but it doesn't make any sense to me. And just very, very briefly, let me speak to the idea of human evolution for a moment, leaving all religion out of it, because I don't think that Bronze Age men who wrote these biblical texts should be telling us about science. Necessarily,
right.
But
still
then
trying
again,
to figure it out.
and you know what? I'm kind of a deist or a theist. I think in some ways, there is some sort of godlike thing, for lack of a better word. I don't like that word because it carries a lot of baggage. Mm-hmm. But who's to say that if God can do anything, why can't he or she or it or whatever work through evolution? Seems logical to me. So I don't see any incongruency between religion and science, for whatever that's worth, for people out there who may be offended. But whatever. If I'm offending somebody, I apologize, but at least I'm making you think a little bit. I'm pro thinking.
Right.
Anyway,
expand the mind.
Human evolution. We've all kind of grown up in a time where we've been told that Bigfoot couldn't be real. It's not real because it doesn't make any sense to be real. And I'd like to say that anthropological paradigm is now gone. That's the old way of thinking. In fact, because what we're talking about there is this idea of what's called the one species hypothesis, where basically the idea that two animals can't occupy the same ecological niche at the same time because one would be better at it than the other and drive the other into extinction. Okay? And they thought this was true of the human ancestors as well. So what the old model was, and this is, by the way, from the time people began understanding that we weren't the first human-like things around, which is like the middle of the 19th century, with the discovery of the Neanderthal skulls. But we thought at the time there was this big controversy about it, and Darwin was like all in vogue at the time, and et cetera. But anyway, so they thought that so one species like Homo erectus. You mentioned Homo erectus. So Homo erectus was around. And then eventually enough changes happened that Homo heidelbergensis came into being and drove Homo erectus extinct. And then Neanderthals, Homo neanderthalis, came into being and drove Homo heidelbergensis extinct. And then Homo sapiens showed up. And then they drove the Neanderthals extinct. And then we showed up, Homo sapiens sapien, which is like a subspecies of Homo sapien. That's what we are. We drove the other – so all those archaic humans are now gone. And that's the one species hypothesis, where one species led to another in a very linear fashion. So it's a line, picture like a tree trunk, right? And that's the way they thought human evolution, or really all evolution, happened. But that model – became extinct with the discovery of more human-like fossils. People thought that way until the 1980s. So it was somewhere in the 1990s that we realized that linear fashion is not the way that it actually happened at all. All these side branches kind of stuck out from that tree. And some of them persisted for a long time, and some of them didn't work out well, and they went extinct pretty fast. So instead of like this big tree-like structure, with a huge trunk in the middle sort of thing, it's actually a bush. And these little branches went off in every direction, and some of them grew for a long time, and some of them went extinct pretty quick. Because now we know that off the top of my head, I'd have to do a little bit of digging to be complete about this, but less than 50,000 years ago, which I think we would all agree is a blink of an eye, geologically speaking, Right. The human beings domesticated plants. Like we started agriculture about 15 or 20,000 years ago. Right. So we've been around for 300,000 years. That's when we figured out how to grow things. So that kind of gives you the scale of our existence so far. Right. The internet was a millisecond ago. So 50,000 years ago, Homo sapiens were here. And by that time, we'd been here for at least 250,000 years. We had Neanderthals still on the planet. We had Homo denisovans, this weird species that we know existed because of DNA testing on a finger bone that we found in Siberia.
Nice.
Homo denisovans, and more work has been done on them. We had Homo naledi, the last remnants of Homo naledi on the planet. We had Homo Floresiensis, the hobbit species that was discovered in 2004 or 2006 on the island of Flores in Indonesia, that small hobbit species. We had the last of the Homo erectus. Homo erectus was around until less than 20,000 years ago. But yet the earliest fossils we have from them were 1.8 million years ago. Mm-hmm. They're one of the most successful species of hominin. Hominin is a fancy word that means human ancestors and offshoots thereof. Homo erectus was by far one of the most successful species of hominin that's ever lived on the planet. They've already lived here almost 8 times. Oh, I'm sorry. The Homo erectus lived on the planet for 8 times longer than we have. That's some perspective. Anyway, as you can see, what I'm painting is this picture for you, where at one snapshot in time, 50,000 years ago, 7-8 different species of human ancestors or relatives thereof lived on the planet at the same time. So Sasquatches are just another one of these that has persisted in small numbers until the present day.
Yeah, and they're very good at hiding themselves. So we've seen in pictures and such. They're very quick, very intelligent, and they know what they're doing. And it's amazing because science is changing all the time. And it is, how do you say it? I know it's a hypothesis. It's a hypothesis, but hypothetically driven. Like you go by
hypothetically.
Yes. I knew you would have the word. But it is driven that way, and there's so many things that we're finding out all the time that changes science for us and the outcome of it. And, they have dinosaur tracks and human tracks in the same limestone together. And there's also things being found on like Mayan pyramids and such as the Stegosaurus that shows that dinosaurs did exist in the time of man, because otherwise they wouldn't have carved it in there. Like, they're carving things that they know and they see. And so there's so many things that are being shown. Like, supposedly they can't really date the bones of the dinosaurs. All they can date it by is the things that are lying underneath it. I don't know if that's different for human bones. And another funny thing that I found is the radiation that are in these dinosaur bones. That's why they paint it with this black, like lead paint, to keep us protected from the radiation that's coming off the dinosaur bones. So it's pretty interesting to hear all these different things coming out all the time that they're now discovering, and different intelligence. Like, before we were just ooga booga and dragging people by their hair and really didn't know what was going on, but then they find that we used all these different tools and we were more intelligent than first thought. And some people are saying we didn't lose our hair because of the way that we're progressing, because why would we then wear furs? It doesn't really make sense. There's so many different things that are coming out, and science was one of my favorite subjects as a child, and growing up throughout school, it just really intrigues me, and there's so many thoughts and things to wrap your mind around all the time, because things are changing. Yeah, and you know what? I think I can't speak to a lot of the things that you mentioned because I don't have direct information about it. But the thing that is changing is the data. Mm-hmm. And because what people forget is that some people believe that science is this body of knowledge that is guarded by these people in these academic ivory towers, and people are possessive of it. And there's certainly that is true, but not in the widespread panic sort of way that is painted. Human science, in my opinion, the word science should be a verb, because it's a process of testing what you think you know. And what you think you know is called a hypothesis.
This is the model that I'm using. And then I'm going to go out and gather information to see if my model is right. And when the data, which is the evidence that you gather, when the data agrees with what you should be seeing, then that solidifies and supports your hypothesis. But when it is contrary, when something doesn't fit the model, your hypothesis, the model of what you think is going on, then you have to adjust the model. And you keep tweaking it and fine-tuning it. You don't throw out everything. You just say, well, I think this is what's going on, but this thing doesn't support that. So can I change the main idea here? Can I tweak this little detail so that fits in? And you keep doing that, and you keep doing that, and you keep doing that, and you continually keep doing that, and that never stops. But eventually you kind of concede and say, you know what, this has undergone so many tests from so many people beyond myself in so many circumstances that we can stop calling it a hypothesis and call it a theory, although we're going to continue to test it.
Right.
And that's the important thing. Like, for example, like Einstein. Everybody knows about Albert Einstein and his theory of relativity, E equals mc squared and all that stuff. They are still, they being the physicists mostly, people who care, which is not me, but they are continually trying to disprove it because that's what you have to do. Just this past year, they did some sort of gravitational wave sort of thing, like a experiment in space on these satellites with these huge telescopes, etc. And yeah, like the data still fits the model. So Einstein's theory of relativity is a theory. It doesn't mean it's wrong. It means that we're still, it's a law. Well, yeah, and so far it's still being upheld by the data. But I think it would be fantastic to find something that doesn't support it. And of course, all that stuff is, he invented that stuff about 100 years ago, 1912 or 20 or something like that. But about 100 years ago, it'd be really cool to find some huge flaw in it because it would make the human mind push deeper. And what would they find? Who knows? But where would they start is the interesting thing. And they would start with Einstein. He would be the diving board for that deep end of the pool, And so I love it when the theories don't hold up because it rattles the cage and it makes us work harder and it makes new ideas and creativity be a driving force instead of static accepted thought.
Yeah, just the repetitive. It's so nice to have that expansion.
Yeah.
Joe in the chat room was wondering, Cliff, do you place any weight on Bigfoot signs in the woods where trees are stacked or bent?
Not much, I'll tell you. And I'm going to step on a lot of toes right now, I know. But I am not convinced at all that Bigfoots make stick structures. And I know people are going, oh, and like turning off their computer right now. But well, yeah, it's a thing, And I say this because I'm sorry if I step on your toes, but I'm a Bigfoot. I'm a Bigfoot researcher. I'm bound to do that. The stick structures, like the teepee structures, these bent over arches, and these pyramidal sort of things. I'm not so sure Bigfoots are doing them. I do think they break branches. I do think they snap trees. I think they can bend things and twist things around into interesting shapes. But to my knowledge, let me back up a minute. When you look at the number, the things that we think Bigfoots do, tree knocking, making vocalizations, throwing rocks, hunting deer, yada, 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 down the list. There are eyewitness accounts from people like seemingly legitimate witnesses that have seen Sasquatches do those things. I have 2 or 3 reports of Sasquatches hitting trees with sticks. I have 3 reports of Sasquatches clapping. I have about I don't know, a dozen or so reports of Sasquatches screaming. I have 5 or 6 reports of Sasquatches hunting and killing deer, or another 24 reports of them carrying. Like, you just go down the list, and all of these reported Sasquatch behaviors, there are eyewitness reports supporting them. But with the number of tree structures, these teepee things, these bent over branches, and these upside down logs shoved in the ground, or trees shoved in the ground, to my knowledge, there is not one eyewitness report that says that I saw them do that. And therefore, I can't jump on board, because I may be a Bigfoot guy, I may be a Bigfoot researcher, but I am super skeptical.
And that's important.
Well, I've been in the game just for too long, and I've seen way too many fanciful, wishful thinkings go further than they needed to later to be proven false. And I'm not ready to jump on board with that stick structure thing, because I'm missing some pieces, and maybe they do. I don't know. I'm fully in. And don't get me wrong, I want to encourage all of you out there listening who think that Sasquatches do this. I want to encourage you to convince me, because you can show me whatever you want, but until there's a 1-to-1 correlation, somebody saw a Sasquatch do that, I'm going to be very, very skeptical of it.
Ryan in the chat room was asking, Cliff, does Bigfoot throw objects or act out at people if they feel that people have overstayed their welcome in a certain area, camping in the woods, hiking off trails, and so forth?
You know what? I'll say yes, but I'm going to say yes, but put a pin in that for a minute, because that question has 2 different sides to it. Whether or not was it Brian intended that or not? Ryan, I'm sorry. But nonetheless, there is an observational part and an interpretational part.
Mm-hmm.
Do Sasquatches throw things? Yes. Do Sasquatches seem to do like bluff charges, and do they act scary sometimes? Absolutely. Why they do it, I don't know, because that's an interpretation. And if there's something I can leave the audience, including Ryan, with, is differentiate observation versus interpretation. We don't know the motive of those Sasquatches, and we never, ever will. And that's the interpretation. But do they throw rocks? Oh, yeah. Do they do things that humans think is scary? Absolutely. I've been scared myself. But why they do it, I can't say.
Well, I think it is to scare you, like out of their area. This is their area, and they want you out, so they're trying to scare you out.
I think that too.
Yeah,
I do think that too. But I also know that that's an interpretation.
Exactly.
Which is different than an observation. And when you collect data, for you Bigfoot researchers out there, when you collect data, leave the interpretation out. Make that an afterthought. Like when you record your stuff, record the observations in a separate section than the interpretation. Because honestly, your interpretation doesn't matter. And you know what? Neither does mine. The most important thing is the observation. If you can put it in, maybe it does have some sort of bearing on it. But again, that's the and again, I'm speaking for myself as well. I only see myself when I look out into the world. I know that my interpretation of things doesn't matter so much. In fact, it might even cloud the waters. So be careful about that. And if you put it in, make sure it's clearly notated as such.
Yeah, and we all have our own ideas on things, and people are like, well, I'm sorry I said this, but this is the way I think. And I'm like, don't be sorry, because I love to hear everybody's interpretation, everybody's ideas on things, because, I might agree with it, I might not, but no matter what, it's going to make me think, and it's going to expand my mind. And that's what I love, is the expansion of my mind, and learning these new thoughts, and thinking about things, wrapping my mind around things.
Yeah, but I absolutely agree, and that's one of the things. During the break there, I was upstairs. I was visiting with my wife for a minute. She's actually upstairs. She's a special effects makeup artist and a sculptor. She's actually upstairs.
Awesome.
she's a freaking awesome chick, man. She's awesome. But anyway, she's upstairs. She's actually making a Sasquatch hand out of clay right now from the backside. And so I dropped by and gave my 2 cents on that or whatever. And we commented because she's listening to the show right now. And I love you, sweetie. But she's listening to the show right now. And she said that this seems like a good show and you're a good host and stuff like that. And my comment was, yeah, she's kind of
wifey.
Just Melissa is her name.
Thanks, Melissa.
She my comment is that, like, I'm enjoying this broadcast because it's not a time constraint show. You know, we've got 3 hours to kill, or however many hours, like 9 hours to kill.
Right.
But you're kind of letting me you're kind of letting me ramble on about whatever, and you're not. I mean, not that many hosts cut me off, but it's kind of a fun show just because we get to ramble on and extrapolate on what we think. But getting back to the thing, I think that we can do that because I am very aware of what I observe versus what I interpret out of that. And I'm not discouraging people from interpreting the data, but I am encouraging people to differentiate the difference because I think that'll make you better at not only interpreting the information, but also gathering the data.
True that. I was going to say earlier, my experience with that, I have a paranormal team and we also have a security team where we do regular investigations as well as security. And we're taking care of this mine up in Rico, Colorado. And all these weird sounds are being heard, hoots and whatnot. And then all of a sudden there's like huge boulders being tossed off the side of this mountain down into the riverbed next to where we're parked. In our station, basically the truck, keeping warm from the winter cold. And one of our team members, he's African American and Cherokee. He's like, I ain't getting out of the car, boss. Like, I'm staying here. You can go do whatever. But I went up later, a few years later. We did an investigation at the Enterprise Bar and Grill in Rico. And then I was like, I want to go tomorrow and check out this area and see if I can find any tracks. And I actually did. Unfortunately, I didn't have any plaster cast or anything, but I did take pictures with my foot beside it and marked it at the head, like where the big toe was, and at the base where the heel was and whatnot. And it excited me. I was like, wow, I actually found some sort of evidence that there is a Bigfoot up here, because who's going to be walking around in the middle of winter with no shoes on? We went back down the hill to have lunch at the Enterprise, and I'm talking to people about, what I found and whatnot. And this mother and daughter come up and were telling me about how they had sat on their back porch having coffee, which was their everyday morning ritual. And all of a sudden, in this clearing of aspen trees, they not only see a Bigfoot, but an albino Bigfoot, which I agree that there's albinos of every creature of nature. Like, there's even albino humans. Most generally you hear of the Yeti, whereas that in Nepal.
Nepal, Bhutan, Tibet, right.
So it could have something to do with where you're at, which Rico, has a lot of snow every year, and you have a melt off for a little while, but then it's back to snow. Do you think perhaps it's because of where it's at, or this is just a genetic anomaly for this creature?
Well, I'd like to point out that most Yetis aren't reported as being white, to be fair.
Nice.
That came about because when the whole Yeti thing happened, okay, well, I don't know, where do I even start? The whole Yeti thing starts thousands of years ago because, like every other animal, they have always been there. And they are yet another example of what we call as a relict hominoid. Relict is a fancy word that means, it's a biological term. It means surviving in small populations still, even though they were probably once more plentiful. And hominoid is a word that means man-shaped thing. It doesn't mean man-related. That's a hominin. But a hominoid means man-shaped. So like gorillas are kind of hominoids, for example. Orangutans, the other apes are hominoids because oid means kind of man-shaped or shaped, and homin is a man thing. So man-shaped, man-like. When I was in Nepal, I spoke to a half a dozen or so witnesses of Yetis, and none of them described them as white. I think the white coloration.
Is it snow?
Well, I think it has to do with language, because one of the things that we, oh gosh, I think I can only really get this across in fish don't notice the water. Okay, they just live in it, and humans don't notice how language creates perception or reality, for that matter. And back in the day, back in the 1950s, when Sir Edmund Hillary was climbing Everest and ran across these footprints, or any number of explorers were running across this Yeti evidence back in the 50s and 60s, they ran across prints in the snow. And the first term that came out was the snowman. They called these things the snowmen. In fact, if you talk to anybody who grew up in Russia, if you ask them about Bigfoot, they're not going to know what you're talking about. Right. If you're asking about the snowman, they will. Because in Russia, there are Sasquatches or Sasquatch-like things, and there the term for them is snowman. And that's a leftover. It's an echo of this time in the 1950s and early 60s when the whole Yeti thing was all, prolific in the media. And it turns out that abominable, like we know that word as meaning like, holy crap, that's really, really bad.
Right.
It turns out
it's freaking huge.
Well, abominable, like, oh my God, whatever is abominable, keep it away from me, right? But it turns out that was a mistranslation of something else. I forget what the word is. I need to brush up on that. But abominable was never part of the description. It was a mistranslation from the native tongue. But anyway, these things were called snowmen. And because of that, in the media, they were often depicted as white because they live in the snow. And that made sense. But it turns out that most Yeti reports don't come from the snow-covered regions. They come from footprint finds in the snow on saddles between heavily forested valleys.
Wow. Well, on
so
that
what
note,
you have
Cliff,
is
I have to cut you
it's
off
time.
again.
I can look at it now.
Yeah, it's the
I don't
time
mind.
again. All right, we'll get back to that after these messages. You guys don't.
Heading to Vancouver and looking for a night on the town? The Moose Vancouver is the bar that never stops rocking until 2 a.m. every night. The Moose has great food with everything on the menu from $6.95 to $8.95. Fantastic, vibrant staff and rock and roll that will bring you back to when the music was real, the hair was long, and the guitars were rocking. Get your party on at the Moose Vancouver, the official party bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Get your horns up with me on Spaced Out Radio. This is Ron Bumblefoot Thaw. Come tune in to SOR where you can hear me rock out with Little Brother Is Watching, the official theme song of Spaced Out Radio. And then come on over to bumblefoot.com where you can find out about my tour schedule, my music, and everything else. Bumblefoot.com keeps you up to date on what I'm doing and the best way to stay in touch with my music and music camps. Sign up for my newsletter at bumblefoot.com and remember, Little Brother Is Watching.
When it comes to the news, we look for the stories that the mainstream won't cover. Welcome to Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter. This is News Director Everett Thiemer. The Encounter is about the weird and strange stories that occur daily, and we scour the world looking to bring them to you. You can hear me with Dave Scott every Monday through Friday in our Encounter news segment. Read us online at spacedoutradio.com or check us out and give our Facebook page a like at SOR The Encounter. So come give The Encounter a read.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Hi there, this is Geraldine Orozco from San Francisco's Bay Area Meditation. I invite you to join me the first Tuesday of every month with Dave Scott for Spaced Out Radio's The Spiritual You. In this fast-paced world we live in, it's time for you to take some time for you. We'll cover every possible subject from powerful meditation to healing techniques to your own intuition and spirituality. So come join us for The Spiritual You.
The freedom to post what you want, when you want. That's the social media freedom you need. Social Media Freedom is the free app in your app store. No need to worry about going to jail or being shadow banned any longer. It's the freedom to say what you feel. The freedom to know Big Brother isn't watching. It's the way social media is supposed to be. Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free. Download from your app store today.
You know, it's hard being the bad man of ufology, but that's just the way that I like it. This is Chris George Zuger, and I'll be hanging out with Dave Scott and SOR scientist Chris Cogswell for Reality Paranormal, the second Wednesday of every month. And our job is to break it down and come to conclusions as to what is really going on in the supernatural world. I'd love for you to join us right here on Spaced Out Radio.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now. The Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
We are getting ready to relaunch the SOR Space Travelers Club at spacedoutradio.com. For $5 a month, you can join us for a plethora of features found nowhere else. Hang out in a private chat room during the show and after party. You can check out some exclusive content and a store specifically for you, as well as a private listener forum where you can post your thoughts, stories, and pictures. The SOR Space Travelers Club, coming soon to spacedoutradio.com.
Do you want to know what's really going on in your world? Do you have questions about who you can trust in the mainstream media? Then look no further than the Rebel Planet. Come get the straight answers right here at spacedoutradio.com. Join me, Jamie Sexton, creator of Rebel Planet News, as I fill you in on the stories behind the stories. All you truth seekers, be sure to tune in to Rebel Planet on spacedoutradio.com the third Thursday of every month.
Find your escape where time has no limits. It's about living today and cherishing the heritage of yesterday. A spirit of adventure for what is new, with the nostalgia of the past. Your timepiece is a reflection of who you are. Life surrounded by beauty from the world around us to the soul within. EscapeWatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
Hi there, this is Dave Scott from Spaced Out Radio, and I want you to come on a nightly journey. Starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, every Monday through Friday, you can come hang out with me and the other space travelers. We have it all from Carl the Alien bouncing on by to those misfit gnomes causing havoc. It's 3 hours of fun and entertainment on those topics the mainstream really doesn't want to touch. Come get all paranormal with us at spacedoutradio.com, and together, my friends, along with our resident guitar god Bumblefoot, we own the night.
Sit back, relax, grab a drink, and listen closely. Spaced Out Radio continues through the weekend. From the mile-high mountains of Colorado to you, listening around the world, this is Spaced Out Weekend with Tessa Nicole Thomas.
of hard to get used to these new break intros back into the show, but I really like that one. It gets me amped up. But I wanted to say welcome back to Cliff. It's so great to have you on tonight.
Hello.
Hello. So I wanted to share another one of your songs, and this one is called Chameleon Hair. Did you want to give our listeners a little intro on what exactly this song pertains to?
Yeah, Chameleon Hair is, God, I think I wrote this song in like 1991 or 93 or something. Most of the things, like most of the things I do, there's a couple different layers to it. I think at the time there were, this has been a pattern through all my life, really. I think there was a woman who changed her hair color a lot or whatever, and I thought, like, well, what color is her hair? It's like, well, it's chameleon colored, you know. You may be one of these as well. I don't know. And
no,
so
I've never colored my hair.
No kidding. All right. I've always thought I'm a man, you know, so I don't gravitate towards coloring my hair as much. Maybe that's a stereotype, in which case I admit it. I'm sorry, ladies. But I've always thought if I were to dye my own hair a certain color, I would dye it clear so I'd look bald.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, that's not what this song's about. This song's about the ever-changing nature of existence. And when I write love songs, it's not towards a particular woman or anything like that. It's more towards the love of existence and life and, you know, consciousness, etc. And some sort of like a meta love song, I suppose. And that's what this song's about as well, is like the ever-changing nature of perception, I suppose.
Nice. Well, here we have... go ahead.
When I listen to myself, I think, God, I sound a lot more spaced out than I actually am.
Yeah, when I first found this show, which I don't generally listen to podcasts, I was sharing my page and it was Spaced Out Radio, and I was like, wow, I can relate. So I tuned in, and everybody's like, you're going to get hooked, you're going to be addicted. And I'm like, no, like this is a first for me, probably my last, but I was hooked and sharing YouTube, over to the new YouTube thing for the channel, and then booking for everybody, and then I started Sundays, and then I got Saturdays too. So here I am. But yeah, and then here's Chameleon Hair, and you said we had a particular artist singing for this one?
Yeah, Monique Powell sang on this one, and she, and for all you 90s music fans, is the lead singer for a great band, a great Orange County ska band called Save Ferris. Their big hit was a cover of the 80s tune Come On Eileen, but they were in a couple movies, and like she's insanely talented, trained as an operatic singer, and I had the pleasure of working with her professionally as a musician for 3 or 4 years in a band in the early 90s before she went on to bigger and better and greater things. So Monique Powell on lyrics, vocals here.
All right, here we have Chameleon Hair. Yes, that was awesome.
Mo's really good, man. I mean, she's so talented. Yeah, and if you can ever catch her band, Save Ferris, I would do it. Yeah, I'm lucky to have played music with her, and I'm equally, or if not more so, blessed that I can call her a friend.
Yeah, it's awesome when you can have amazing friends that just shine. And going back to our questions in the chat room, Dale was asking and saying, out of left field, but any thoughts on the Younger Dryas events, Göbekli Tepe, or prehistory civilizations?
I don't know what he's talking about. I'm sorry to say that.
Me neither.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing about asking me. Asking me anything. Beware, I will always tell you the truth, and the truth in this case is that I don't know what you're talking about. I'm sorry about that. I must have missed that one. So
well, it's always better to say I don't know than to baffle with BS.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I speak to a lot of people I speak to a lot of people across the board about hypothetical and fringe topics, and I've always accepted I don't know as a perfectly acceptable answer.
I think it makes a person more credible when they can say that instead of having to make something up to make themselves look smart.
Yeah, and it's true. And you know what? In September, I think it was, I don't know. My sense of time is pretty elastic, but I think it was September. I was at the Pocatello Bigfoot Conference, which was in Pocatello, Idaho, put on by a great guy named Brandon Tennant. He runs Sasquatch Prints and Falling Rock Productions. He's a T-shirt manufacturer. But Dr. Jeff Meldrum from the local university and I were the guests there giving presentations. And we did we each gave our talks or whatever, and talked to people and shook hands and stuff. But we did a Q&A together. And early on in the night, I said, whatever question you ask me, most likely the best answer is I don't know, but I think this, and then ... And after I did that twice, I think Dr. Meldrum even, a PhD in anatomy with a specialization in bipedalism, bipedal walking on two legs, and Australopithecine feet, the most qualified guy in academia to deal with Bigfoot. Even he was prefacing his answers with, I don't know, but I think this, and then looking at me and laughing because he knows that's as true as anybody,
Right. Let's see. Let me go back to this page because Joe had a question and he was asking, have you heard of reports where a person believed they took a clear picture of Bigfoot, but it didn't show up in the photo?
No. Not once. I have received an email from a person or two that says they saw one and it disappeared in front of their eyes, but not what that gentleman referenced at all. No.
Nice. So I was going to ask, you worked with this team from 2011 to 2018. Do you prefer working with a team or do you like to work predominantly alone?
I prefer to work alone, and that's not a slight against my partners. That's a statement about myself. I am a quiet, introverted homebody by nature, and when you see me on TV being like Mr. Razzmatazz and being charming and saying funny stuff and being animated, what you're seeing there is in reality that's Teacher Cliff. That's a personality that all of us have. Maybe you may not have Teacher Cliff, but you have some sort of alternate perception of yourself that you put on for work colleagues or church people or your grandmother or your children or any number of audiences. And my persona, I guess, for lack of a better term, is just an exaggerated version of the best of me that I put on when I was teaching as well. I got really good at it with an audience of 30 10-year-olds. And so when I was put in front of an audience of 1.3 million a week, I used that same persona. But in my real life, I'm a quiet guy. who has a lot to say because I have a lot to think about, but I don't want to tell anybody, and I don't care what most other people think. I live out in the woods, just my wife and I, and my dog. I'm a quiet, introverted homebody that I enjoy speaking to people. Don't get me wrong. It's not like I don't come to my table at the conference. I hate you. It's not like that. It's just that I, like most introverts, I'm apprehensive and a little cautious and maybe even a little bit fearful of the public.
Yeah,
even though I'm the one on stage, or the stage is a television, but I'm a little weird in that way.
Yeah, I can feel you there. I had a hard time answering the question, will you do the show? Because I am an introvert and I do have social anxiety, and depending on where I'm at, like generally I'm just the listener, and I'll give you feedback and such, but otherwise, like, I like to keep to myself, and the whole thought process going on, thinking about things and mulling over things. So when I did say, okay, I'll do it, it was really kind of stressful for me at first, but I've learned to love it and enjoy it. And just being here with my paranormal family, which I like to refer to as SOR Asylum, because we're all a little crazy here.
Right.
It's been a great experience, and it has really made me grow as a person, putting myself out there like that, and being here with my peeps.
Yeah, it's been one of the most challenging things.
Indeed.
I don't know, man. I don't crave attention, and it makes me uncomfortable. But I also don't believe in being comfortable. I think that comfort is a drug.
Mm-hmm.
That is every bit as addictive and damaging as, like, say, opium.
Right.
I don't, because if you comfort is a great plateau to pause upon, but you wouldn't want to live there because it makes you lazy, and it doesn't. It makes you not grow.
You stifle yourself.
Yeah, and when you put yourself in uncomfortable situations, it forces you to be something that you don't think you are, that you wouldn't define yourself as, and that's growth. That's growth as a human being, and what more is life about than growth as a human being? You only have let's hope there's no such thing as reincarnation, and we only do this once. Let's go through let's go through this and kick ass and be awesome and be as weird and loud as possible and grow as a human being.
Yeah, and Dell is saying 30 10-year-olds can be much more inquiring than 1.3 million adults, which I agree. It's so hard to please younger people because they're
until you have to answer their emails.
Right?
Yeah, because at most you got 30 or 60, like with 30 10-year-olds. But when you have 1.2 or 1.3 million adults who are weird and watching Bigfoot shows, and that proves they're weird, right? You get a tremendous amount of email, and you got to answer them. So yeah, I'm with you in spirit, but practically speaking, there's a lot of emails. So.
Indeed. So, working with this team, what were the shenanigans like? Did you enjoy it? Did you grow from working with these different team members? Did you gain a different perspective? What was it like for you? And before you answer that, I just have to let everybody know it is third hour. So if you want to call in and ask any questions to Cliff, the number is 970-335-9596. That's 970-335-9596. Okay.
I just wrote that number down because I've got a couple questions here.
Okay. Please call in.
Okay. So anyway, the answers to your question is yes, yes, and yes. If you can remember what you asked.
Yes.
And then the last question is you get to choose. That's a hard one to answer. You do not get to choose your family, right? We're all stuck with the brothers and sisters we have, and we love them, and that's an important human lesson. You also don't get to choose your road family. Mm-hmm. And these are the people that you work with. Essentially. And in my case, I was on the road. And now that I've heard myself say that, it sounds like I didn't like the people I worked with. And I love every single person I worked with. Obviously, I had Bobo, I had Matt, I had Renee, the cast members. But there were 16 of us on the road for 7 or 8 months a year for 7 years of my life. That is a different thing. And like maybe one person would disappear and somebody else would come in and take their position because you need somebody to be a line producer or a supervising producer or a story producer or a camera guy or whatever. But I think from what I hear, compared to most reality shows, we had a pretty steady crew. And 2 or 3 of us beyond the cast probably made all 7 years, like 90% of the episodes or so.
That's awesome.
And some of these people I will be friends with the rest of my life. Obviously, the Bobo stands out first and foremost because he's a cast member, and he is who you as listeners all know. But Chad Hamill, the supervising field producer, he's the guy on the road with us and in the office. He will be a friend of mine the rest of my life. Andy, Grandpa. He was only on we called him Grandpa because he's a crotchety young man. But Andy and his sound
guy. I was just
guy.
calling my 6-year-old son that earlier. You're a crotchety old man.
Well, start calling him Grandpa.
Okay.
And you can say you named him after the sound guy on Finding Bigfoot. He was only on for maybe half the episodes. We did about 100 episodes, so he was on for about half the episodes. But the second half, and I love the man. Sean Mantooth. I only say his last name because it's so peculiar. Great producer, super funny guy, amazing stand-up comic. One of my best friends. Love the man. I'll know these people the rest of my life. And there's so many. Mary and Brianna, and like I just go Craig. I can go on and on and on. List these people I love. And Moneymaker, you see Matt on TV, you can tell that he is a strong personality. And for some people they gravitate towards him and some people they're repulsed by him,
right.
You don't get to choose. You don't get to choose your road family. I love Matt. And, to be fair, I also knew Matt for, I don't know for how many years, but I've known Matt since about 2004, 2005. It turns out I met him at the same time I met Bobo. We were all in the BFRO. None of us are in the BFRO except for Matt at this point. It's kind of his group, but Bobo and I aren't. But we're all friends with Matt, and we work with BFRO people. It doesn't matter what group we're in. Being in a group makes about as much sense as being in like a political party. It's like, well, if you want to be a follower, go for it, but if you want to think for yourself, vote once every 2 years. It's cool. You don't have to like profess allegiance to something larger than you. So BFRO or not, who cares?
Yeah, I actually had a BFRO on my show on the 20th of last month, and I only had one guy on there. I believe his name was Ace. And he was the only one of the team that would come on the show because everybody else wanted compensation. I'm like, it's free advertisement. Like, what are you talking about? And we have fun. We have a good time. But it was good to have him on, but it was a very short-lived show because his wife thought her water broke, so he had to go take her to the hospital. And
oh my God.
Yeah, it ended up being false labor, but we had a good show anyways. But yeah, if you can get me an in with Matt the Moneymaker, that'd be awesome to have him on the show with Ace or whoever else would like to come along. But yeah, I really looked into their team, and they really do a great job, and they're good at what they do. And I think they're the longest running Bigfoot organization in the nation.
That may be true. Now that I'm thinking about it. Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to get back to you on that one. But the BFRO is a good group. I'm not a member because honestly, I'm not a part of any group. Because I don't know. You've been talking to me for 2.5 hours. I'm a little eccentric. I'm not your. I don't know. I'm not your
guy.
Perhaps I'm not your normally painted house. I'm not your normally colored cow. I'm not your whatever. I'm perhaps not what you think I am by watching the show. But anyway, back to the topic. I can certainly get you in touch with Moneymaker, and if you want him on the show, I can encourage him to say yes or whatever. But
yeah, that'd be awesome because, like I said, we had Ace on and then it got cut short, so we were going to reschedule for another time. So if Matt could come on with him, I mean, that would just be even more awesome, just to have more members of the team.
That'd be great because like Matt is a friend of mine. I would say this in front of Matt as well, so don't get me wrong. I'm not heckling Matt or anything.
Right.
I don't always agree with him. And he certainly doesn't always agree with me. And he's a strong personality, but he's also one that I respect. And even though we have differences, we have found a way to get along and work forward with each other in some ways. He's got his own thing and I've got mine, and they don't intersect very much and stuff. I love Matt. Like, he's my brother. I don't always like him, but he's my brother. He's a strong personality. I don't always like my regular brother either, my brother Rob. Yeah, I love that guy, but I don't always like him because that's what brothers are about.
Right.
Yeah. But no one can deny that Matt has done some like real work for the Bigfoot community to propel the subject forward. And, I don't know. I'll just stop talking. So I like Matt, but I don't always like Matt.
Right.
But I love the guy. Yeah.
I like Matt. I don't always like him, but I love him.
But to be fair, I can say that about Renee or Bobo or me for that matter. I like me, but I don't always like me.
That's right.
But I love me. I'll forgive myself eventually.
Own worst critics.
Yeah, as long as here's the thing. Like I went out to breakfast this morning with this guy named Mike, who's this old time researcher. He's like 60, but he knew Bob Titmus. He knew Renee DeHinden. He's been going to the Patterson-Gimlin film site since the 80s, and he's got evidence to support that. And like, he's a great guy who has experience at blah 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 blah. But I told him this morning, if you can forgive somebody for being who they are, everybody's just great. Yeah, and Matt's a strong personality. Yeah. Yeah. Some people think I'm an asshole. I'm kind of not, but I don't care. Like, can you get past that and still hang out with me and be cool? I think that's soup. What?
I just was muted, so let me ask that again. So Monk was
asking.
I
heard you.
Yeah, but they didn't.
Oh, forgive me.
What does Cliff think about the flat Bigfoot theory? When you try to take a picture of Bigfoot, it turns 90 degrees and it's flat, and that's why you can't take a picture of it. Your thoughts?
I think that's super funny, but that's not real.
Right?
Yeah, that's something I would say because I think it's funny.
Yeah.
So I don't mean to insult you, but
that's the first time I've heard of that theory.
Yeah, I've never heard of that. That's awesome. But I like oblique ways of thinking in general. So, of course, I would love that. But I don't think that reality supports that. People see Sasquatches, and they see them doing perfectly normal animal sort of things. Feeding and moving and hiding and, calling and not... They don't see them turning sideways and disappearing. So are they dimensional? Yeah, they exist in at least 4 dimensions. Some people that I would find credible suggest they live in more than 4 dimensions. Length, width, height, and time are the 4 that I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. In other words, they're biological animals. And there's no reason to think that they're not. And some of you out there in the audience may think that, no, I had Bigfoots talking to me in my head when I was lying in bed and I live in Cincinnati or New York City or Miami or something. Well, that's all fine and good. But remember what I said earlier in tonight's broadcast. We need to learn to differentiate observation versus interpretation. Observation. I hear voices in my head. Interpretation. They're Bigfoots telling me to save the planet or to be kind to one another, or I don't know, whatever Bigfoots might say to you personally. I don't know. That's up to you.
Put out more peanut butter cups.
Yeah. But I don't know. Again, observation versus interpretation settles a lot of this problem.
So in your guys' show, you guys would often have town hall meetings. How did those go, and what did you think about that as far as doing your investigation and such?
Town hall meetings were interesting because on screen, when you're watching them at home, they're 4, 5, 6 minutes long, right? For us in real life, they're 4 to 5 hours long. We ran out of the hall. We invite everybody and their mother to come out and tell us their Bigfoot stories. We listen to every single person in that room. You may get 5 stories on camera, maybe 7 stories on camera. But in real life, we have 37 or 40 stories. And some of them are complete, utter nonsense. And some of them sound feasible, but we don't really know. Most of them are rather mundane, and like there's nothing really special about them. Like I saw a Bigfoot run across the road in front of my car in 1987 on this particular place. Never saw it again. Okay, that doesn't really matter except for a data point on a map, basically. So, and some of them were fantastic that had never been heard before. There was footage of them, like real video footage of a Sasquatch or real footprint casts, evidence brought back and shared with us for the first time ever on camera, where the producers didn't even know they were coming. And so the town hall meetings, even though they were mostly very, very long and uneventful from my perspective, ended up being fantastically valuable because it uncovered evidence, photographs, etc., vocalizations, you name it, footprint casts, that had never been seen before, that the producers themselves didn't see coming. And the producers were involved in lining up witnesses and making sure we had enough to make a TV show if nothing else happened for 3 months before we set foot on the ground in the location. So those people who planned out this huge story arc and storyline and things that we can do to make sure we had enough footage for a TV show, even they were surprised with the witnesses that stepped forward with evidence from, Podunk, Oklahoma, or wherever we were at the time. Town hall meetings were a tedious process because the minutia that was involved in them, but at the end of the day, extremely valuable and surprising and fantastic and such an integral part of the show.
Yeah, I would love to be a fly on the wall for those. But I also wanted to ask, what does your kit look like when you go out to do an investigation? Like, what's your number one tool? Plaster cast, etc.
Oh, all right. Well, I'll look back on the most recent investigation that I did. I think it was August 23rd of this past year. These 2 dudes were hiking up on this place by Zigzag, Oregon, which is, maybe like 5 or 8 miles from where I live on the slopes of Mount Hood outside of Portland, Oregon. Zigzag. I went up and met them at the trailhead. And they're these 2 South African guys. They went hiking for the day and they stumbled across the Sasquatch and saw it and told me about it, basically. They didn't tell me about it for about a month after it happened, though, unfortunately. So, but I decided to go up there anyway because it was really close to my home. So I went up there and I met them. And what I brought with me was a video camera and a notebook.
Nice.
And both of them were for the same reason. Video camera in case I can record any information about the locations that might be pertinent. because most witnesses stumble across a Sasquatch accidentally. They weren't planning on doing so. They they didn't have any recording equipment or documentation devices or whatever. And they stumble across them and go home, basically, and tell somebody else about it. And maybe it makes its way back to me or something. In this case, that's what happened. So I went up there and I went with the witnesses and I recorded their observations as we walked up the trail. This is where I heard some bushes moving. This is where I found some footprints in the ground. I didn't know what to make of them because we're on our way up before I saw the thing. This is where I saw it. This is where it was sitting at the time. This is where I went down. All that stuff cannot be documented authentically and accurately enough without a video camera, because you have not only the witness testimony right there, but you also have the location, and you can point the camera where it walked or where it was sitting or where it stood up and what the tree was, where the tree was on its body as it stood up, so you can judge height or whatever. So I think a video camera would probably be the number one piece of equipment you can bring with you on a Sasquatch investigation, because you get to see where it was and listen to the witness describe it if the witness is there. Beyond that, I would think it's a notebook. A lot of people ask me, probably 2 or 3 times a week, somebody writes me an email and asks me, what should I get? Like, what sort of equipment do I need? And I understand some people are just into gear because I'm a musician, and a lot of people say, oh, I like the Fender so-and-so tube amp or whatever, or I like the Godin or the Fender or the Gibson Custom SG, whatever, something guitar. I've never been a gear guy because the equipment that I recommend that you bring Bigfooting is a notebook, and basically napkins and a pen,
Yeah,
so,
it's very important. When I went up for my Bigfoot thing, I had my video camera, which was running the whole time. I didn't have my notebook. But the one thing that I wished that I had was the plaster cast to put in the footprints that I had found, instead of taking these pictures and trying to get people to see what I'm seeing. Had I been able to pour some plaster cast in there and get the actual footprint from it, that would have been epic. But I just didn't have that. I didn't have pancake batter, nothing.
Well, you know what? Photographs can do, but I will say this, that having plenty of experience, it's really, really, really difficult to take photographs of footprints in the ground, because the two-dimensional, modality, I guess, of pictures doesn't translate into the three-dimensional reality of what it looks like in the ground. Well, but it's at least it's something. Casts are always better. If you can cast it, I suggest you do it if at all possible. And of course, beyond that, the date, the time, the weather conditions, the recent weather conditions, if we're talking about a track in the ground, all those things are pertinent and important and interesting, there's plenty of things you can do, and I don't know. And now that I'm listening to
I'll have to send you the pictures that I got, and you'll tell me what you think, because it's hard to get in pictures what you're seeing with your eye, even with sunsets and sunrises, which I take pictures of all the time. It's just not as beautiful to the eye as it is in pictures. Or as beautiful in pictures as it is to the eye, is what I meant to say. It's hard to get that scope of what you're really seeing in a picture because, like you said, it's just a two-dimensional. We don't have that going on to where you can see the whole perspective of it.
Yeah, photographs are never as good as the reality of it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So how does your investigation go for your team? Do you have a set lineup as to how to carry out an investigation, or does every case vary?
Every case varies, but that being said, there are some overarching concepts that I try to adhere to. Number one being, let the witness say their truth. Don't interfere. The biggest mistakes that I hear from Bigfoot witnesses, when interviewing Bigfoot witnesses, is that the investigator jumps in. what you should do is say, hey, witness, you saw something weird. Tell me about it. And like they'd start telling you about it. And let them go. Let them exhaust themselves of words.
Mm-hmm.
And then afterwards, you can say, well, you said this. Can you clarify? Let them talk. Because if they're telling the truth, you'll be able to figure that out really soon. And if they're not telling the truth, 80% of the time, 80, not 90, but 80% of the time, you'll give them enough rope to hang themselves with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that was another one of my questions, but before I go there, Joe had a question, and he's asking, have you ever collected any paranormal evidence or have such observations while searching for Bigfoot?
You know what? I'm so sorry to say that I don't think that Bigfoots are paranormal at all. I think that they're perfectly normal hominins, species of man-like things that are still around, even though we thought they might have gone extinct. It's been estimated that we know about less than 2% of the species that ever lived. Mm-hmm. And that goes for human ancestors as well. So I think these are just an example that has persisted until the present day. It's no big deal. And there's nothing paranormal about them. Because even though paranormal observations do occur, there's not enough of a consistency that I think they're real. And now, don't get me wrong. There are plenty of things that humans don't understand. In fact, I'm even very willing to entertain the possibility that paranormal, for lack of a better term, things happen that disguise themselves as Bigfoots. But I don't think Bigfoots themselves are paranormal.
Yeah, and Monk was saying you weren't asked if Bigfoot was paranormal. Have you seen anything paranormal or anything weird while you're out in the field looking for Bigfoot? Has anything popped up as far as the paranormal or other than normal?
I've seen a UFO. I wasn't Bigfooting. I wasn't Bigfooting at the time. I've had ghost things happen to me, but I wasn't Bigfooting at the time. So to be true, I have not witnessed paranormal things out there while I was Bigfooting. However, other people have. Bobo, for example. And you would expect me to say Bobo, of course. But Bobo has seen lights and orbs and things and flashes of lights and this and that maybe 3 or 4 times. When I've been there, right there standing next to him, and I did not.
And it's interesting because a lot of people that do see Bigfoot, sometimes they say they see him with an alien, or they see him getting on a ship, or they think he could be like interdimensional or something. I think he's just really good at what he does. He's really good at camouflaging and hiding and moving quickly. And perhaps that's why pictures come out blurry, or maybe there's ghosts of Bigfoot and that's why it's blurry. Who knows? Like, it's hard to really pin it down.
You see, I don't think that at all. I think Bigfoots are about as paranormal as bears are, or cougars are, or as wolverines are. That's a really good example, actually. But I know weird stuff. I was going to say weird shit, but I don't think you can say that. Weird stuff.
You can't say that.
Are you going to beat me? Are you going to beat me?
No, I don't have
really?
a beat button.
Oh gosh. Well, all right. I'd like to be beeped anyway. I've never have been beeped. But I know weird stuff happens. Okay? But I don't think that has anything to do with Bigfoots. Because as far as I can tell, as far as what I personally observed, there's no reason to think that Bigfoots are anything else but a perfectly normal species of thing, hominoid, human-shaped thing, that has a near human intelligence, but different. It's hard to compare the two because it's species-centric and a little unfair, in my opinion. But I really just don't see anything paranormal about them.
Me neither. I'm kind of on the same page.
I've never once observed something firsthand in the woods. I've heard plenty of people's stories, but you know what? That throws them in the same batch as the rest of the witnesses. It's like, yeah, I'm going to listen to your story. I'm going to believe it's more or less true, and some of the details are a little bit fuzzy because you're a human and you're observing, and you're not a trained observer. You don't know how to judge distances, for example, or you don't know how to judge heights of subjects, or you don't understand that mass increases exponentially and height increases linearly. Like, you don't understand those things, and I'm going to listen to you like a witness who doesn't understand those things. And so what that means is a couple grains of salt, you know?
Mm-hmm. Well, you guys have been everywhere, like Indonesia for the orang pendek, Vietnam for the wild man, China for, what is it, Yeren? Nepal for
Yeren.
the Yeti.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
The most laden state here is Sasquatch, basically, as far as Sasquatch sightings. How does that compare to the rest of the world that has these other hominids in there?
Yeah, well, Sasquatch is a term that was anglicized by a teacher, a white guy, on the Chehalis Indian Reserve in British Columbia. There's a guy named J.W. Burns, and he was a white guy who was a teacher on the reservation, or in Canada, they call them reserves, of the Chehalis people outside of Harrison Hot Springs. And this guy was listening to these stories about giant 7 or 8 foot tall hairy Indians, hairy wild men in the woods from his Native American friends. Or, well, they don't call them Native Americans. It turns out Native American is a term only used in America, only used in the United States of America.
I can believe that.
In Canada, they call them First Nations people. And
Nice.
the reservations aren't called that. They're called reserves. I don't think that's a cool term because it sounds like you can hunt them.
Mhm.
And that's obviously inappropriate.
Right.
But on the Chehalis Reserve, that's where the term Sasquatch came from, because the local term is unpronounceable in English. And I know that because I spent 5 minutes with the guy trying to pronounce it.
Right.
He was saying, no, Cliff, it's like and there's like clicks and weird glottal stops and sounds that are far too complex for English to engulf, you know? And he said, no, it's not like that. And I could see why J.W. Burns, the white teacher on the reservation, or on the reserve, said, nah, screw that. I'm going to write it like this. And he did. And that's why Sasquatch came about. Bigfoot came about in 1958 when footprints were found and crossing a newly built road in Northern California. And of course, now I've forgotten your question, so I'm just rambling about the origins of Bigfoot.
Well, how do we, in the United States and Washington State being the biggest sightings, how do we compare to Indonesia, Vietnam, China, Nepal, these other places where other variations of Bigfoot have been found? Do we have more sightings, or are they more open and sharing with what they've found?
Well, I think that it's not necessarily more sightings unless there's more population. But I think the media is more pervasive here than in China.
Mm-hmm.
Because in China, the internet is restricted. They censor things. They slow things down. They speed things up according to like governmental preferences. But here it's a little bit more free, at least for now. So I think that we hear about sightings more here because there's a lot of people and the media is good. But the animals exist in the same numbers in those other places as well, and but there's less media to disperse the information.
Right. Well, Monk was asking, have you or anybody you know ever gotten an EVP while trying to record a Bigfoot? Special note, I'm not saying that Bigfoot are making the EVPs, but have you guys caught anything as far as EVPs coming across on your recordings other than Bigfoot?
Huh. Well, I've never measured that. My wife, who is a ghost hunter at heart, she has an EVP meter in the bedroom, actually. But, well, as far as I know, no one has ever taken the measurement while things are happening. So I can't really comment.
Oh, that's awesome. She's a paranormal investigator, basically. That's what I do before I did this, and I still do it. I just don't get as much time with it as paranormal investigation and helping people understand the other side and being able to peacefully coexist, or if it's not a good thing, getting rid of it. But as far as your guys' evidence that you've gathered with trail cam pics, DNA, and plaster cast footprints, what is the biggest piece of evidence that you've collected thus far?
Well, when asked that in the past, what I've come back with is the congruency of the evidence. Because the footprint cast evidence, for example, shows the same morphological features in the impressions, whether it's 1958 or or 2012. You can see the same morphological features. In other words, the Sasquatch foot is built differently than the human foot. We have an arch, for example, like from the big toe back to the heel. You can see evidence of an arch. They don't have that. They have flexibility in the mid part of their foot that we hide in our footprints. But they show a flexibility behind their metatarsals, which is a big word, that like certain bones in the foot or whatever. They show a flexibility behind the metatarsals that we do not have, but yet the other ape species do have. Chimpanzees, gorillas, orangutans, etc. They have a flexibility underneath the ankle that we do not have because we have an arch. We have an arch because we're persistence hunters. Like okay, you see a deer, I see a deer, we're going to chase that deer down and eat it. And okay, I'm going to chase it down for a while. I get tired. I tag team you in, and you chase the deer while I rest. And when you get tired, you tag team me back in, and I chase the deer till I rest. Et cetera, back and forth. But the deer never gets to rest. And eventually we exhaust the deer and jump on it and kill it and eat it. And that's what persistence hunting is. So we do that. Humans do that. Sasquatches don't do that. Most other species don't do that. Cheetahs do it. Lions do it. A lot of animals do it. But we don't do that.
Makes you wonder how they get their protein besides pollywogs and such.
Well, there's plenty to be found. But if you're going after the big game, like deer and antelope and stuff like that, you got to persistence hunt. There's no way around it. And humans learned how to do that. But Sasquatches didn't because they lived in a different environment. And as proof of such, they retained their coverage of hair and we did not. We shed our hair, which is why we are a hairless ape, basically. So they retained the flexibility in the mid part of their foot. I don't know. Now I forgot where I was going with that. Gosh, yeah. Anyway.
Well, we only have 2 minutes to go, and I want to get to Kevin's question, and he's asking, Cliff, do you think that the name that cannot be spoken with the clicks and other odd, unpronounceable sounds by some humans may have actually come from sounds that the Sasquatch were making, and that is why they named it that way? Oh, no.
I think I lost you.
Okay, you're back. Did you hear what I said? Okay. Kevin was saying, Cliff, do you think that the name that cannot be spoken with the clicks and other odd pronounceable sounds by some humans may have actually come from sounds that the Sasquatch were making, and that is why they were named the way they were? You have uno minute. Oh, he's back.
Okay.
Wow. We lost you again.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No worries. Well, we have 1 minute to go. And did you hear the question, or should I read it again?
You should read it again.
Okay. Kevin was asking, Cliff, do you think that the name that cannot be spoken with clicks and other odd unpronounceable sounds by humans may have actually come from the sounds that the Sasquatch were making, and that is why they were named that way?
Well, no. I think that humans learn to make sounds independently, and English doesn't encompass those.
Yeah, and it's somewhat of a different dialect. But on that note, we're at our closing point. So I shall start the closing audio. So, can you tell our listeners where to find you and how to contact you?
Yeah. In general, you can contact me through cliffbarackman.com. It's spelled like Barackman. Whether you or not you agree with the president, it doesn't matter, it's his spelling. But cliffbarackman.com, or you can find me on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all that sort of stuff. You could also Google search Cliff Bigfoot. It'll come up to me. So, yeah, check me out. See what I'm doing.
Kevin's like, home address, coordinates. Come on, Kevin.
Sandy, Oregon. That's all I'm saying.
Sandy, Oregon. You got to figure it out from there, Kevin. But thank you so much, Cliff. It was so wonderful having you on the show this evening.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for spending time with us and answering our questions. And hopefully we'll have you back again someday.
Whenever you want.
Awesome. And thank you to everyone in Spaced Out Radio, Facebook, Spreaker, Twitter, Paranormal Radio, TalkStream Live, Deep Talk Radio, and wherever else in the universe you're listening tonight. I had a wonderful time this evening, and it was my pleasure, literally and figuratively, and I can't wait to do it again tomorrow when we have Chad and Alta on for Orbducted on spacedoutradio.com. You guys, don't forget, we are all in this together. Together we can make the world a little better. And together, my friends, we own the night. Until next time, nighty-night, love and light to all my space cases out there. You guys and gals have a wonderful Sunday. And I'll see you all back here tomorrow night. And again, we're going to have Chad and Alta on, and they're going to be discussing their abduction. And they also have a book called Orbducted. If you guys would like to come in for the after party, I believe Cliff is going to be hanging in there for a little bit, and you can phone in 970-335-9596 with any questions, or if you'd like to discuss Bigfoot and the different things we covered tonight. It'd be so great to have you guys and have a nightcap with you. But until I see you tomorrow, you guys take care of my yous, and I'll see you tomorrow. See you on the flip side, guys.